us. Mr. Mauer.
Good afternoon. We're going to try to keep you on time. We've got a variety of staff here that's going to rotate in. We'll be playing musical chairs depending on which division it is. I think we probably have about 8 or 9 different budgets for you to consider. Talk a little bit about a couple enhancements and talk a little bit about maybe some things that they're not in our enhancement request, but in other departments or divisions that we'd like you to consider as well. So the first one, we're going to jump right into parks, which is page 161 in the book. And what I'll do is I'll go through chronologically and right through your booklet here to make it easy on everybody. Parks, I guess, just for the citizens at home, and if you haven't read it recently, I'd like to just read our mission statement. The city of Oshkosh seeks to provide a park and recreation system that will meet the needs of our current residents and future generations, preserve and protect the city's open space, water, historical, and natural resources, and provide a park and recreation program that is designed to enhance the city's quality of life. So that's really what we live by, and in addition to that, we obviously take a look at the city strategic plan that the council just recently adopted. As we go through all of our different division budgets, you're going to see how a lot of those various aspects of the strategic plan play into our budgets. The top ones I think you'll see throughout are promote and develop public and private partnerships, strengthen our neighborhoods, and obviously enhance our quality of life services and assets. Another one that, with all of our recent building projects that we're currently in the midst of, improve and maintain our infrastructure. So a lot of those things roll right into much of what we do. So as far as the parks, Chad and I are here. If there's any questions, we'll go through just a couple items and then open it up for any questions. Some of the things, obviously the two big ones this past year and will continue to be for the next year, is the construction of our Parks Administration Operations Facility and the Lakeshore Park Four Seasons building. So consuming a lot of our time, but also keeping our daily operations on task. I'm relying on Chad for a lot of that while I'm really involved in the construction of those. One item I'd like the council to know is probably since about 2.5 to 3 years ago, our department is fully staffed finally, as of about September 6th, I think. So everything in our forestry, landscape operations, and parks, we're currently 100% filled at this time. So we're hoping to keep it that way. It's been a struggle to get here. And as I'm sure you've heard from other departments, the challenge has still been that seasonal part-time staff. Certain areas throughout the summer were challenging for us. Some we had plenty of applicants. So, just to touch on a couple of our bigger goals for.
Hey, Ray?
Yes.
Can you just jump back to 162 for me for a second? Page 162? Or jump ahead, I'm sorry.
Sure.
This just caught my eye. What's going on with the zoo specialist position again?
Yeah, if you take a look, it looks like we're going from 16.8 to 18.8. That's not the case. What we did this year, we had a parks maintenance worker that was in the same pay grade as a zoo specialist, and that individual has spent most of their time at the zoo,
Okay.
and that's their primary focus. So basically, it was a change in title for that individual. So you're going to see there's not a park maintenance worker listed here any longer.
Okay.
That's why the zoo specialist, actually, it looks like we added 2, but it was only the portion of one that the council approved in the budget, but then that park maintenance position transferred into that zoo specialist.
Thanks. We probably talked about that during our budget meetings, and I missed that. Sorry.
Nope.
Thanks.
We could have probably listed the park maintenance and showed one current and
That's
zero in
okay.
the future, but that's where it's at.
So we understand.
Yep.
We'll have to correct that page, because the council did approve a zoo specialist like a mid-year.
Half-time, I think that one was.
Yeah.
After
so
3/4, I don't remember.
I jumped out of me right away, and because I told Councilmember Ford there are no increases, and so I was waiting for him to just say, so
It's just that one position.
thanks for
not listed.
clarifying.
Okay, so back to the 23 goals, and a lot of these are items that are included in our capital improvement plan, obviously, so feel free to jump to there as well. First one is the tennis court reconstruction at Tech Miller and West Haven Circle Parks. Those 2 courts are in pretty bad shape. Actually, out at West Haven, I think we had to take down one of the bounding boards and just put up some plastic fence to cover that hole because what we have out there can't support the bounding board anymore. So this project would be part of replacement of a lot of that, as well as the court. And I'm sure that all of you, or most of you know, pickleball is just a rampant, fast-growing sport. We expect to see that to continue. Last year, we completed the the pickleball courts at South Park as part of the tennis court renovation. Our goal is to start getting pickleball courts on every side of the city. So as we look at the tennis courts at West Haven and Tech Miller, at this point, we're gonna look at reducing from 2 tennis courts down to 1 tennis court and making one of those courts into pickleball courts. So we can get pickleball courts on the west side and the north side as well. So we are getting inundated with requests for more pickleball courts, even though we have plenty at Menominee and South Park, they're not enough, so. The next item, Rouge Park Trail expansion. This is, I think, something the neighbors spoke to last year's budget time, as far as basically our trail system behind Traeger School going to the west to the preserve, this condominium development to the west. That's been a part of our trail plan as well as the Rouge Park Master Plan for many years. Essentially, that's a trail connection for not just that condominium association, but all the residents in that area around Traeger School and north of Sawyer Creek as well. Rural Park play equipment replacement is something that I believe is being funded through some of the Healthy Neighborhoods funding. We worked with the neighborhood association over there. They agreed that this is a project they'd like to apply for, so they submitted an application for that. Quarry Park shelter and parking lot removal. If you recall, that parking lot is really not a parking lot right now. It's a hill and valley, and Parks Board talked about this and felt the better thing we should do, because there's very limited use at this point of the parking lot and the park because of the methane gas ventilation system out there, to simply get rid of the parking lot in the building and make that more into green space. We talked about possibly adding some native plantings and some other things out there. So we're gonna look at including that in the budget to make more green space out there. There should be ample parking on the park, or the streets adjacent as well. And right now, it's really used primarily just for some soccer practices, and I think maybe some flag football practices at times, but that number's even gone up. Next one is Pickard Park development. Pickard, hopefully you know, is out on 9th and Clareville area. And that is, what we'd look to do is work with the neighbors, get some trails, pathways connecting from the sidewalk to a play structure or whatever that might be. We'll work with the existing neighbors out in that subdivision. And then this number 6 says replace lighting at West Haven. That's a 22 project, but we're working with Scooter on that one to complete that project next year. Whether he's ordered the lights and they're back ordered, or if he's going to be ordering those soon, that's something we'll complete next year. As far as the operating budget, not a whole lot that jumped out on me, and I'm sure that you've talked a lot about the combining of different accounts during the morning and how some of those numbers might reflect what's in some of these line items. Not a whole lot that is changing in here.
Just going back to the goals for next year, I think we also had 476 Central City parkland acquisition for 2023.
I should have handed this out first. This is the prioritized list from the Advisory Parks Board on the CIP projects. We can walk through that if you'd like, because I touched on some of those. This is a process that the Parks Board does annually. Staff will bring forward some suggestions that we have for CIP, and then the Parks Board will provide input. So basically, this was their prioritized list, and I can go right down and let you know where we're at on these projects. Lakeshore Park development, we had requested 500,000. I believe, I didn't look, I'd have to look, but I know it's funded maybe at 250 or 300,000, I think is what Mark and Russ felt we could handle next year. Again, we talked about the Quarry Park restroom, parking lot demolition, West Haven tennis courts and Tech Miller tennis courts we talked about, the Rouge Park trails, Pickard Park, Rowe Park. The park trail improvements, this is a annual request that we started this year, I believe, and it's really helped us to improve We started out with using the money out at Menominee Park, at the Ames Point and some of the other trails over there. And it's something that we're going to be able to do and work with our streets division. They provide the staff and charge us for the material, so we get a pretty good bang for our buck. And we have a number of trails throughout our system that really need to be addressed. So that's included at this point. Riverside Cemetery Road repaving, this is an every other year request for $25,000. And this, same thing, we work with our streets division to redo some of the roadways out there. They provide the staffing and we pay for the materials. And then Central City Neighborhood Park funding. This was something new that the Parks Board decided to ask for this year. I believe right now it's on the to be determined list. I don't know what Russ called that list, but it's potentially unfunded right now. And what the Parks Board talked about here was having some funding set aside in case there's an opportunity for something downtown. And I think part of that discussion evolved from when the school district entered into the agreement with UW Oshkosh for East Hall. We said, is there a way that maybe we could work with them potentially to, if they've developed that into a recreational area, to help do some playground or some park amenities at that site? That's one thing we had talked about, or if there's any other properties or something that comes up in the city, in the central city, that we did have some funding there and available.
But you said that you think it's unfunded, but we did have it for 2023. So,
That was, the Parks Board requested that, yes. But I'm trying to find where,
and council approved.
On page
the council approved that, too.
476.
They approved the CIP, but the budget on
Right.
page 455 identifies it as a to be determined. It's an unfunded project.
I'm sorry, 455?
Yeah.
yes, at the bottom of that page, sorry. So again, that really gives you the CIP side of things, but it's, again, a lot of the time that we'll spend on our operations side. Looking at our bottom line for comparing 22 to 23, under 1% increase. I think a lot of that has to do with, again, hiring some new staff, maybe coming in at lower salaries. Nothing really jumps out at me as far as. Any questions? Not, we're gonna have Travis shuffle up here for the forestry.
Budgeting?
Yes, thank you. And one of them is on the forestry side. One that we accidentally omitted from our list was the update to our comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. That was one item that we had talked about when I met with Mr. Van Gompel and Mr. Roloff. Our current plan was updated in 2018, and I recently got a response from the DNR that they would, in order to stay eligible for grant funding, their policy still remains that every 5 years we should make a current plan. So that was an enhancement, I believe, was $30,000 for updating our corp. So that was one, and then as we get into the forestry side, if you look at number 13 on the most current, we also had discussions in our department budget meetings that EAB is something that Travis and I will talk about is consuming, even though if the council knows you had approved 3 different contracts, 2 last fall and 1 this summer for contracted services to help us with those removals. Roughly $340,000 worth of outside contracted services, and our staff is still tackling street trees that are not on those removal lists. And just to give you another idea of that problem is the North High Conservancy, which is adjacent to North High School. That's city park property, and on the north property of that, our staff was in there, I don't know if they've completed yet, but about 130 trees, I believe. So about 120 to 130 just on the north side of that conservancy area were dead ashes that had the potential to fall onto neighboring properties. So we worked with the neighboring properties to make sure that we're on our property and removing those trees. So again, our in-house staff is continuing to do that, but we didn't want to go into next year's budget and have to come to you and say, we didn't plan for this if we did need additional funding, and that again, mainly for removals. But we're gonna start to talk about getting into the replacement for those ash trees. So that'll get me into our discussion here. If you recall, when we approved the outside contracted services back in July, we had requested $98,663 that the city then contributed to the community foundation, which will go into the Taking Root Fund as our contribution. Travis and I have met with the foundation staff, and as part of their donor appreciation event, which is this Wednesday, I believe, they're going to kick off a program that they're going to concentrate on getting funding for the Taking Root program to help us generate funding for replacement of trees. So that's going to be their big drive announced on Wednesday. I believe they already received a commitment of about $100,000 based on the city's contribution. Our goal is to raise between $400,000 and $500,000 to start replacing those trees. So, that goes into a lot of what we do, not only with forestry, but the parks, again, promoting those public-private partnerships, and we work closely with the foundation on that. North High Conservancy budget enhancement. So hopefully that answers your question on what that is. As far as forestry goes, again, Travis is here. One of our accomplishments was getting Travis hired with Bill Sturm retiring last spring. So Travis has hit the ground running and been inundated with EAB. Probably 80 or to 90% of what he's doing is EAB at this point. He also was just able to get full-time staff hired. The final position that Travis was filled in his division was, I think, September 6th that individual started. So he's also doing a lot of staff training at the cemetery and the forestry operations, as well as EAB. Hopefully the council knows what we do is we have a goal every winter of pruning 1/5 of the city terrace trees. Bill Sturm, the previous forester, worked on dividing the city basically into 5 segments. And there's, if I remember correctly, any between 1,200 and 1,500 trees per 1/5 of the city. So our goal is to get through that 1/5 of the city, and it helps us to be a little more proactive, helps us get less calls for, raising the height over the sidewalks or roadways. We're hopefully being able to do that on that regular routine. So that's one of our goals for this year for Travis as well. And then looking at next year, it really focuses on EAB. It's continuing to be that big of an issue. And we know it's going to be something for us to tackle. You will see in the personnel numbers, if council recalls, we did add that additional 3/4 arborist position, so 3/4 this year, and then you'll see the full position in 20. As I look at the operating budget going up about 4%, I look at line 6306, health insurance. I mean, that pretty much consumes any increase just about.
Is there room in there for the update for the core plan for next year? Is that planned for already?
That would be part of the parks, and I think that would be part of your discussion on any enhancements. For the corp? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would become part of the parks.
That's probably a one time or once every so many years, so
Once every 5 years.
I would
there.
suggest if we wanted to keep it off the levy, obviously it could be used as fund balance, or we could add it to the list of ARPA projects.
For the corp update? Yeah, because I don't
That
see
was
it in the
accidentally left on the
enhancement.
enhancement sheet. It was left
It
off.
should be on there, but
Okay.
it was an oversight.
Yeah, Russ and I had a late conversation over the weekend. So that's really forestry. There's no questions. We're gonna jump to senior center revolving, which is. Yeah, if there's any questions for Chad or Travis or anybody, feel free to jump. So, senior center revolving fund is page 195. I'm gonna kick it off, and Gene has some fun things to share. So this budget is really, I'll say it's a flexible budget. It's a programming budget really where We have revenues that would offset any program accounts, so it gives staff a little flexibility to try new programs, making sure we're covering costs, and maybe making a little bit of money to replace some of the equipment and so forth. Gene, I don't know if you want to touch on some of the new programs and the Connect Through Tech and where that is all at?
So our Connect Through Tech program is a grant-funded program with the Helen Bader Fund that comes to an end the end of this year. So right now, we started that program in May of 2020. We were granted $152,000 for that program. Right now, we have had 2,239 visits with serving 427 individuals with an average of 5 visits for each individual coming in to ask for tech help through either laptops, telephones, anything, any technology questions that they had. So.
And that program was really helpful for the senior population during COVID. We received word that we got that grant in mid-2019, I think. So we were planning for one aspect of that Connect Through Tech. When COVID hit, Gene and staff really shifted and took it to the virtual side of things and helping people get things done virtually, getting to learn how to operate their devices, shopping online, those types of things. So it was timely during the COVID. Anything else program-wise, Gene?
Just a couple of our, this year we knew that through the COVID timeframe that a lot of our programming individuals wanted to be outside. So we decided to offer 4 outside entertainment events. One, the previous year we held at the Leach during the lunch hour, and this year we held 2 at the Leach. That total of 4 events outside with 385 individuals that participated in those entertainment events. So there are other programs that we had, partnerships with Learning and Retirement with UW Oshkosh and the Oshkosh Rec Department. We've offered 19 programs so far between both of them. And we see an average of about 30 to 34 people attending those presentations with those partnerships. So we try to enhance more of our educational programming as well.
So Senior Center has this budget, but then obviously there's an operational side, administrative side, which is the next one we can jump into on page 221. And this one is supported by the tax levy, as you can see on page 223 up on the top, to the tune of $353,500. One item I want to call your attention to on the 2022 accomplishments. Jean and her staff went through the reaccreditation by the Wisconsin Association of Senior Centers this year, and early this summer, we were notified that reaccreditation was successful. And just to give you an idea, nationally, there's only about 200 senior centers that have accreditation, so we have one of those 200 here in Oshkosh. The center was first accredited back in 2000. Every 5 years, it's up for renewal, but because of COVID, they had an extension for us, so we received our accreditation this year. And just to give you a couple things that I found interesting from the group that Gene had to meet with and go through the accreditation process, some significant notes, comments from the review team, excellent and thorough risk documents and waivers. You can see the 7 dimensions of wellness in action throughout their programming and planning process. Excellent logo and tagline, including their name, Oshkosh Senior Center. Impressive policies, including donations, dealing with reporters, gambling, staff use of facility, display of artwork. All will be best practices. Their senior champions help spread the word in the community. And they have progressive programming and are in tune with the seniors and the boomers and what they want at the center. So I thought a lot of those comments really hit home for, I think, the excellent work that Jean and her staff do, and I think it's well noted by the others in the state. So
Do we have the membership numbers listed somewhere in the senior center?
There's really not a membership for the senior center. You can register for programs as a resident or a non-resident.
Okay, I thought you had to apply to become like a member of the senior center.
You apply to be part of our database. So then if you want to participate in programs, then you're in our database already. So then you can register them through our system.
And also to mail the newsletter, correct?
So at one point, we used to get information on usage and number of people. I don't know where that went on any of our recreational or parks. So do we have a number of how many folks are participating in the senior center? Where's the KPI information? Oh, we didn't put it in. Oh, that's right.
Here's a copy of our unduplicated and duplicated visits.
And we could get the council members each a copy of that.
Attendance through the last 4 years of programming attendance. So, that doesn't capture everybody that's in our database, that captures every individual that is active. So that if they've come and attended an event at the center, they're documented in.
So that could be duplicated potentially, because some people would go to multiple
Yeah,
events.
so one section is unduplicated individuals, and then the other side is duplicated. So when we report our funding for the county, we count duplicated visits, and also unduplicated visits, so.
And we could provide copies of that to all the council members as well. Anything, Gene, you want to touch on as far as programs or your collaboration with the fire department?
Yep, our collaboration with the fire department on our falls prevention program started in the beginning of October. We have met with 10 individuals so far. 13 more are scheduled, and with that, we go through a series of about 3 different tests to determine their fall risk. So we're hoping that that continues constantly. And then we're also looking at getting individuals from the fire department, referrals from them. I'll just pass around a sample of what we're doing. And the machine that the fire department purchased shows an individual's risk of falling. We just met with this individual last week. He's a very high risk individual, and this showed him what he needs to do to prevent a fall. So that's some of the.
So what you'll do, Gene, is then start some programmings around some of those exercises or things that people need.
Right. So we incorporate many activities to help with individuals' strength and balance to help them with, they don't fall again.
I think one thing to make note of too is the Friends of the Senior Center still contribute largely to the operations. The 70,000,
The last couple of years, it was 65,000, and this year, 2023, we're asking for 70,000 from them. So, and if you know, they do a campaign in the spring and the fall, and then also the Food Truck Fridays is what brings in their income as well.
any further questions for Senior Center? If not, we're gonna move right through to the next one, which is Riverside Cemetery, which is page 243. Want to touch on some of the tours and collaboration with museums?
Sure. So this year Donna's been doing, I want to say they did 6, or they're scheduled for 6 tours between our Riverside Cemetery staff and the museum staff. And so what they do is they've created a nice little tour of the cemetery. We go and visit some of the grave sites of historic people on Saturdays. so it takes about an hour. But, so we've done 6 of those. They're scheduled for 6 of them this year.
And what that collaboration helped us do is, the museum have obviously some great marketing staff. They were providing tours in the past as well as the cemetery. So when the new museum director started, she saw a little bit of that duplication, and we talked and we said if we can do something collaboratively where we utilize some of their marketing at the museum as well as their program registration online type things. So it worked out well, and I think we were able to, like Travis said, offer a few more tours, which I believe are filled from the last I had seen. So you'll see in the 2023 goals, again, repaving some of the cemetery roads, removing EAB affected trees, and then trying to replace some of those out at there as well. So. Just a couple highlights. This cemetery is obviously tax supported, tax levy supported. It has gone down a little bit for '23. And again, I would say that's probably due to some of the newer staff members coming on. You'll also note that we did have a sizable donation, a miscellaneous donation this year under 4952. I believe that was somebody left in their will to go towards the Riverside Cemetery, so that was an unexpected gift that will help us out in our fund balance for the cemetery as well.
Bless you.
If there's no questions, the next one will be Park Revenue Facilities, which is page 249. And this is one where you look at page 251, it's a variety of what we'll call projects or project areas in this budget. So you'll see that Unity and Community, which is that an event that was held a couple of years back. There's still a small fund balance that's carried forward in here, and it's just, again, just an accounting place for us to hold those dollars until needed. But then we have the Menominee Park Zoo, the boat launches, amusement rides, concessions, vending machines, which we no longer have out in the parks, Miller's Bay, the Reed's concessions, special events at the zoo, Lakefly Cafe, Lakeshore Park. This is where we have been budgeting some of our staffing for out at Lakeshore Park. And then this year, we've got the landscape operations. That's the new staff member that is being funded from through the bid with donations from the Convention Visitors Bureau, the foundation, and the bid through a donation with the Keller Foundation, I believe. So that's where that position is budgeted as well.
Is the Miller's Bay, does that include the kayak racks?
Yes, it does.
What else, is that like for mooring or docking?
Yep, the sailboat mooring and the on-land storage area.
Oh, right, okay.
I wanted Jenny to touch on a few of the accomplishments, because this is really where Jenny spends a lot of her time, a lot of the special events that we budget here. Jenny's successful in getting sponsorships and donations to make those events, most of them free to the public, if not free, very low admission. So for her, securing sponsorships for those, and maybe talk about, I know you had Jenny's zoo education events and programs in here, if you want to talk a little about those.
Sure. So we had a zoo education coordinator this year who is funded through the Oshkosh Zoological Society. So she did a really good job of offering, we have what we call Wildlife Wednesdays, which are every single Wednesday from the first Wednesday in June to the last Wednesday in August. And those are a variety. We bring in, the Zoomobile from the Green Bay Zoo. We might have a raptor program. We might have a frog program. So those are really great programs that are on Wednesdays for people to enjoy. So throughout the summer, we had about 1,400 people who attended those. And then we also do everyday programs. We usually have about 3 a day as long as the weather cooperates with us. So there's usually one in the morning, mid-afternoon, and then later in the afternoon. And those range from all different things, but usually with our own animals, our own collection. So they might do, spoon feeding of the otters. They might do a program with our skunks, different things like that. And they do a really nice job of those scavenger hunts and those this summer. We brought in over 4,260 people attended those programs. So it's a really great, being a free zoo, just getting people in to kind of attend those programs, and they've just been growing every year, attending those, and those are all covered in sponsorships to bring in.
What we offered in the budget document this year, again, page 251 is really that summary of all those various projects, and then the pages following, so pages 253 to 259 are really those project areas broken down individually.
Where are the special events in here? Which page?
Let me get 57.
Yeah, sorry to read that. It's kind of finding the page numbers hard sometimes because of the footer kind of going into the bottom of the cube. If you look real closely, you can find it.
So you're saying that 257?
257. Towards the top,
Okay,
the
that's,
project number 11428.
so the rest of the special events, like Brews on the Bay and all of the other Zuluing Boo and all of that, are all in the same,
Yes.
that's for the expense. Where's the
Revenues at
revenue?
the top, and then expenditures. See where it says zoo special events, the 114.
The revenue,
The revenue's right underneath there, park facility fees,
You're in
concessions,
255.
sponsorships.
right. Okay. So it's in concessions? Or fees?
Depends what the revenue is. Like for the Zuluing Boo, that'll be a facility fee. Concessions will be all the concessions we bring in. Sponsorships are all the items that Jenny gets donated, along with gifts and donations, obviously. So if you're asking specifically about
Because we
Brews in the
expanded,
Bay.
yeah, we
that's-
expanded, I think, some of those events, like we were doing them like once or twice a month, and then they went, I think they increased.
Twice a
We
month.
did 4 last year. In 2021, we did 4 Brews on the Bay, and this year we did 8.
Looking at the 2023 goals, I'll let Chad touch a little bit on the Bear Fox exhibit. And then we've got a plan or develop a plan for some of the small mammals that we've recently acquired. And there are 2 bigger items at the zoo, if you want, Chad. That's as far as.
With reference to the bear and fox exhibit down at Menominee Park Zoo, we had a generous donation for constructing this exhibit that we've been working diligently on through the past year with the material challenges and things of that nature. Hopefully, we're finishing up this year with some utility revisions that we have and starting full construction in the spring of '23 with the guideline that all of our materials are going to be here in spring, which looks everything on schedule at this point. So I would say in 2023, we'll have an active year of constructing that exhibit, which we're proposing for 2 black bears, and then we already have 2 red fox in our collection. I'll be moving over to this 2-part exhibit, so looking forward to that taking place. In regards to long-range planning, we do have other exhibits at the zoo that are a little tired and not very well pleasing to the eyes, which we call the old corn crib exhibits where the badger are in. We have skunks as well and a raccoon, and we're trying to develop a small mammal exhibit for them for each of those areas that are more fitting with our zoo going forward. So we'll probably see more information on that in the following budget year as we get into that process.
So again, the 255 is a pretty complex budget because it's got a number of moving parts and pieces, but if you have any questions, any one of us three can probably answer.
Yes, on the, again, going back to park facility fees, so our shelters, so I'm looking, I don't know, under amusement rides, looks like the fees went down over the last, 2 years. Where are the shelters reflected?
That would be in the Parks General Fund.
Oh, okay,
Those, if I remember correctly, we bring in about $30,000 to $35,000 a year.
and that's trending up, I would think.
It is, and once we have the Four Seasons facility completed,
Right.
it'll go up as well.
Okay.
But that'll be in the 100 general fund.
And for amusements
It wouldn't
this
be in the
year-
revenue? I mean, I'm confused. Why wouldn't be in here?
It's always been budgeted in the 100. Basically, a lot of our expenses, our staffing, our cleaning supplies, those types of things are in the 100 fund, so some of that revenue hopefully helps offset some of that. These are more of those specialized areas, the concession stands, again, the boat launches, the zoo, some of those more unusual type of facilities, I would say, that we are in charge of. But you're right on the amusement rides. Obviously, the carousel is something that the city got rid of a few years ago. We're down to basically the train down there, and that's something that Chad and Jenny and I have to continue to talk about. The train is tired, and it's difficult to keep that up and operating. It's expensive, and we're not quite sure if that engine dies, what we're going to be able to do. So that'll be something we'll be having some discussions with the Parks Board about long-term, so.
So then the rest of this must be coming just from like the kayak and the little other rental
Yep,
type
water
things.
rides.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna mention, for 2022, we were only open Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh,
So
okay,
we
right.
reduced the days that we were open as well.
Okay, okay.
Very difficult for staffing that area as well, so.
Yeah.
That's, they have to be 18 and older, and so that's really the age
Oh.
group we were struggling to get in our seasons. The 18 to 23s that we typically would see coming back, whereas it was tough to get those individuals.
So
Yeah.
that's a state thing because of amusement operators, so they have to be that. So that's a really challenging area to try to keep staffed, so.
If there's nothing else, we can go into the Leach Amphitheater, which is page 261. Looking at a couple of the accomplishments we had down there, we did some repairs to some of the paver blocks and a few of the other hardscapes within the facility. We had our staff do an exterior sealing on the building so that we were able to do some interior painting. We had to do that to seal off any condensation or any airflow coming from the exterior of the building. So once they had the exterior sealed, the staff was able to do some of these painting in the backstage area, the changing areas, and I know Chad was planning to have most of that done and completed yet this fall. There's probably some areas that we, again, listed for 23, there's some touch-up areas we'll have to do at the Leach. This is a pretty, I would say, pretty static budget. It is supported by the tax levy, as you can see on page 263, at $23,000. Again, it shows you the revenues, and this is where the Waterfest rentals go in, any weddings that we have there, and then any of the concession sponsorships, those are the things that are in-house, and that, again, Jenny has the Tuesday night concerts, movie nights, touch a truck, those types of events that we have at the Leach. So we try to do our best to break even on this one, and some years are better than the others. I think our Tuesday nights are climbing back up a little bit after COVID.
Yeah, unfortunately, it took us about 5 years to get them really, really well attended, which was the summer before COVID. They were just phenomenal, really great. And then COVID happened, so now we're trying to build back up again with the numbers, so.
Was that like acts canceling or, because it's outdoors, attendance or both?
This summer, COVID,
since then?
I just think that last year, you know, many people still were not comfortable coming out, whether it was outdoor or not. They just didn't come out much.
So it was attendance, not necessarily like the acts canceling?
Yeah, nope.
Okay.
And then this year was definitely better than last, with just more people feeling way more
Yeah.
comfortable coming out. And even though it is outdoor, there's just a lot of people who still just weren't last summer doing a lot of stuff, so.
If there's nothing else, we'll move into the next one, which is Pollock Water Park, which is page 267. On this one, you'll probably see in the budget when you look at it, there are a number of large expenditures, specifically down in the 7,200, 7,204, 7,214. So the pool was constructed in 2006. So this being our 17th season, I would say typically between that 10, 12, 15 years, you're going to start to see some of the things that we need to start addressing. The pool plastering, if you recall, we brought the bids to the council a couple weeks ago for the basin in the Lazy River. That's one. And then if you look at next year, you're going to see that the leisure pool area also has some replastering that we need to take a look at. The good thing for us is when the pool was originally constructed, when they were receiving donations for the project, they set up $1 million endowment at the Community Foundation, which was intended for this time in the pool's life to help to fund some of those capital projects. So I've shared that with Bill Wyman and his staff that, you know, this year, next year are going to be two of the bigger expenditures. And that, again, that's what that fund was intended for. And I think Bill understands that. And although it's tough to tap the fund for that much, he understands that we need to do that every 15 to 17 years or so.
Why is it tough if the money is set aside for it? Why is that tough?
I think because of, over at the Community Foundation, they have a policy of not having the funds go below a certain threshold. But I think too, it's a double hit for me when I look at our fund over there because of the market and seeing where it was a year ago compared to the number where it's at now. But again, talking with Bill, we're not concerned right now because even though we're tapping it for some of these large expenditures, by the time we have to tap it again for large expenditures, it should do well enough in the market where it's back up and had increase in value considerably. So you'll see that, again, the pool plastering, we've started to plan for replacing some of the heaters out at the pool, and those are something that we feel we can have rebuilt according to our contractor we work with. And I believe those each are at about $25,000 to $30,000 just to rebuild. And we have 3 of those, I believe, Chad. So we're going to start phasing those in so that we don't have a heater go down at the pool during the summer when we really need to have those. So
Just out of curiosity, by chance, is there such a thing as a solar powered pool heater for commercial pools like this? I don't know.
I know years ago when you had the solar covers that you could utilize. I don't know if I've seen anything
I haven't
for
seen anything yet in
heaters.
regards to the supportive circulation system that we have for that end. I guess that's something we'd have to look into or talk to some
But do
other.
we use that solar cover type thing when
We do
it's,
not
you
have
know?
a cover for a facility.
So not aware of anything specifically. Jen, you want to talk on any of your programs or anything that you had up at this pool?
We just had our sponsor back this year full, for this facility, so we offered 6 special events throughout the summer, as well as 3 different weeks of camps for kids. So we do one for the little kids, and then we do one for about 7 and 9-year-olds, and then 10 and above. So we do kind of a week long in the morning with the kids, and they have lots of fun, and they get to do all kinds of just different water things and crafts. And so Whitfield Community Credit Union is our sponsor up there at the pool, which is a great fit for them, and really great for us that it covers all of our special events and little camps that we do.
And just, again, to let you know, the pool is obviously tax levy supported by the amount of $64,000. Everything else is through concessions, admissions, donations, and obviously through the foundation, some of those larger donations towards the facility. If there's nothing, we're going to move down to Senior Center Revolving Fund. I'll just touch on, it's page 285. Even though that there's not, I'll let you get there. 285 is really a building account for the senior center that we utilize at times. It's on page 285. 285. You'll see that in 2022, we actually used just under $7,000 to complete the hearing loop in the Oasis room in the south building. For next year, we're not proposing any expenditures out of there at this time. So it was used in the past for the new signage on the outside of the building. For some of those building projects, we'll utilize some of the funding there. So just wanted to make sure you knew that was in there, but no expenditures. The next one would be park improvements on 291. This fund is actually, we work with all the user groups that utilize our athletic fields. I believe it's a number of years ago, going back to maybe 2016 or 17. The Advisory Parks Board, we had talked about instituting some nominal user fees for the user groups when they use the ball diamonds and so forth. It's something that the user groups came and were not supportive of. We explained to them in future subsequent meetings that whatever funding we brought in was going into a segregated fund that we could then use to do some upgrades to the ball fields and so forth. What we ultimately were able to do is come to an agreement with the user groups that instead of a user fee, what they do is basically donate $10 per participant from their program. So they keep track of that. Stacy requests that each fall, and then they provide a $10 donation for each of their participants, which again, we put into this fund. Looking at the balance this morning, I believe we had about $40,000. We're estimating this year we'll bring in about 7,500 more, but we'd have a balance of about 47,000. What we're looking to do is utilize some funds next year to do some improvements to the ball fields. It'd be getting some infield material, doing some leveling, getting some proper grades on the infields. So it'd be materials and possibly some contracted service. So that's what this budget is for. No questions. The next one would be our final one, which is the memorial bench and memorial tree fund, which is on page 293. So this one, if you're not familiar, we do have a memorial bench program as well as a memorial tree program where individuals can donate money for a bench in memory of somebody or a tree, and with that they get a plaque with the bench or the tree gets planted. What we were able to do is work with finance for this budget to separate out both the benches and trees and try to allocate those across the different the project budgets again. So you'll see it broken out as far as what we expect to bring in donations as well as expenditures. What we do is we'll pay for the benches, and then our staff will do the concrete work in-house. So we're obviously paying for the plaques, the benches, and then absorbing the staff cost, the cement costs. So kind of gives you an idea. We estimate we're going to bring in roughly about $20,000 each in memorial trees and memorial benches.
Is that it, Ray?
That's all I have.
I think that's about it. I guess we can maybe take a short break. I'll see if the city clerk's available. Yeah, Russ, you went through all yours, right?
Yeah, we didn't go through the ARPA list, if they want to go through ARPA, but that was the only other one.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to take a few minute break? Okay.
Thank you.
The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is...
Afternoon. So the Clerk's Department has two budgets to go over with you today, as well as an American Rescue Act allocation request. So our first budget is on page 93. So our strategic plan goals to promote transparency and communication and to continually improve customer service. We work to keep this front of mind in the Clerk's Department. We have a lot of citizen contact, both at the counter and on the phone. Oftentimes we serve as the first point of contact because we're on the first floor, so a lot of people step in by us first. For 2022 accomplishments, our department did issue all of the 22-23 liquor license by the July 1 deadline. This was an unanticipatedly difficult task for our department due to the timing of the licensing process. We unexpectedly lost our most senior and well-versed team member just as the process was really ramping up. So I am very grateful for the way our team members and all other city staff jumped in to help us get through that process successfully. One of our priorities in the coming year is to better align this process with other departments and find ways to make it more streamlined and useful for everyone. For 2023 goals, in 23 we'll be focusing on bringing our new team members up to speed and moving forward as a team. In 2022, 3 of our 4 team members joined the department. So I started at the beginning of the year. Sabrina started in September due to the deputy position coming open. And we are currently working to fill our election specialist position since Missy took another position. And then, of course, we still have Terry. But so 3 of our 4 team members are new. So
You're the most senior full-time person.
yes, I am. So you'll see that due to that staff turnover, we've requested additional funding under employee training and development, which is budget line 6421, to increase that line to $2,000 for next year. If there aren't any questions, the next budget is elections on page 97. So under accomplishments, we have administered 3 elections and are preparing for the general election on November 8th currently. We've been working to educate our voters on their new polling locations following redistricting and trying to keep up with the continually refined election rules and guidelines. Of particular note is the certification envelopes for absentee ballots, just trying to get the word out to people that we're pretty particular about what all has to be on that envelope due to the new guidelines. So get the word out, sign it, and put your full address on there, please.
Including the zip code.
Yes, city, I need either the municipality or the zip code. in order for us to find it to be complete. Address number, street name, city and zip, please. Yes. So, our goals for 2023 are to continue to train the election inspectors to ensure they're familiar with the current requirements and guidelines, and to work to accommodate a high number of absentee ballots, to try to educate the public as to absentee ballot certificate requirements, to try to decrease the number of envelopes that need to be corrected by the voter prior to processing the ballot. Because unfortunately, if that certificate isn't sufficient, we can't open it and process the ballot. So we're very fortunate to have an adequate number of election inspectors for the November 8th election. People, I think the water bill message got out there as well as just word of mouth. And we are also working with UWO to have about 30 students serve as poll workers through one of their classes, which is
Excellent.
awesome. And I'm very hopeful that we can continue that partnership as that class, turns over into the future. So I'm really excited about that partnership. So funding for the elections budget varies greatly from year to year due to the number of elections and the anticipated turnout for each of those elections. In 2022, we will have had 4 elections, one of which is the general election, with many statewide races on it. But in 2023, we'll have up to 2 local elections. So not quite as great of an anticipated turnout, and only 2 rather than 4. But then when you get to 2024, the budget will be significantly greater because we're going to have 4 elections, and one of them will be the presidential. So just even with the number of poll workers that I would anticipate and hours to get things through, it's more in the even number of years. Any questions on that? Otherwise, I'll ask you to go to page 38 for our ARPA request. There's actually 2 lines for the clerk. The very first line, Badger books, for $132,100, and then the last orange line, Badger book storage and elections, for another $24,000. So we're requesting to move to electronic polling books. This technology will allow for greater flexibility at the polls, potentially less poll workers needed to man the poll books themselves, all wards being able to utilize all of the poll book lines, and less potential for human error because numbers cannot be double issued or skipped. There's a minimum requirement of 1 Badger book for each 800 registered voters, as well as the minimum number at each polling location. So at this point, I'm anticipating a need for 56 units initially. These units will also need to be stored in a climate-controlled, secured area. So it's like storing 56 computers. Each unit is similar to like a PC or a laptop, and there are also printers and other needed accessories for each location. So it's a big change for us. There's currently no requirement to move towards Badger books. It's been around for a while. Several communities do utilize them. But I do anticipate that sometime in the not too distant future that's coming down the pipe where the state's going to ask us to move to the electronic system. So I'd like to be out in front of such a requirement so that if it does come to fruition, we can determine the best way of how to move forward and implement and do the rollout with them, rather than being required to have it done by a certain time. But due to supply chain and other difficulties, I don't know when they'll actually arrive and be able to be utilized. So I'd like to order them as soon as we can, because the hope is to have used them for more than 1 election prior to the 2024 presidential.
And that's probably as big a reason to get it early, not just that it's not mandated yet. You were being very kind. The state requests. The state won't request, the state will mandate, and sometimes with little to no notice. I think Jesse getting ahead of this just makes a lot of sense.
What's the perpetual cost to go electronic? Obviously, anytime we go electronic, there's memberships, there's subscription. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, subscription fees. But what's the long-term impact of going electronic compared to what we do now?
They are PCs, so they'll have to be turned over every so many years. The other couple communities that I've talked to, because they don't receive a lot of wear and tear, they do seem to last a bit longer than your average PC, but it'll depend on storage and these ones are going to have several different hands on them with poll workers and everything. So this will become a rotating expense as we get it implemented to replace, and we're talking 56 units So if you do, you know, a fifth of them every 5 years, there will definitely be an ongoing expense. There will be some cost savings in that it should require fewer people at the polls to run them as poll election inspectors or poll workers, because you need one person at the machine instead of 3 people at each poll book, or, you know, for each ward. And you should be able to get into any one of the lines with the electronic poll books, because it doesn't care what ward you're in. It can figure it out and get you signed into the right one and everything, whereas you physically have to sign the correct book currently with the paper versions. So there's some of that, but the biggest cost savings for us is going to be in staff time after the election. Currently, after the election, every voter has to be banked into the system, and it big sounds dumb, but we have a little machine that goes beep, beep, beep,
Getting a
beep.
little technical on us.
Yes, and so that when you go and look, you can see that you voted in the 2022 general election, right? Every voter wants to see their voting history. So we physically have to go through and do that with every one of the voters. If you use this system, it already did it for you. When they come in to vote, it's part of the WIS vote system, and it's all, so there's some work that is automatically done, which should help also with fewer human errors, you know, because it's electronic. So there are some hopes, but it's going to take a while. We have, you know, a couple hundred poll workers who have never seen these things before, and I do anticipate that we're going to have some people that really love them. That's what I've heard from other polling, you know, other cities, and some that say, I'm out, you know, this is not for me. I did my time and I'm moving on. So we'll see how that transition goes. I'm struggling at the moment to figure out the best way to move forward, but we will figure it out as to, do we just pick 2 polling locations the first time we do this, or do we go guns blazing and do all 15 at once? But we'll figure, it'll depend when they show up, right? And how much training we get from the state and everything. So it's an expense.
How
I think
far
we're gonna
out
get there.
is, I'm sorry, maybe you already said this and I didn't catch it. How far out, if you ordered them today, is it that these are actually produced and delivered?
That's a great question, and every time we ask, you get a different answer. Because, you know,
Will it make it by 2024?
that's why I want to order them now, to be
That's the
perfectly
point.
honest
That's
with
why
you.
getting them now makes so much sense, because
Because if I can order them in November, there's a chance I might be able to use them next year, but I doubt it, because the elections will be February and April. So I really don't think it's realistic to think that we're going to have everything here in time. But by the following February, goodness, I hope so, right? So, and then we would have February, April, and August to work through whatever that plan is to get them implemented, so that the first time my poll workers are looking at them is not at the presidential election.
Jesse, if for some reason, choose not to elect the full amount to like get all of them, would you be able to provide like, I don't know, like a list of like the busiest polling locations, you know, so we could say at least, well, these ones can get the electronic ones for now, but maybe not all of them.
I'd have to talk that through with the state a little bit, because I haven't really gotten a clear answer as to if I can do the rollout or if I have to do them all at once.
Gotcha.
But yes, we definitely do have the busier polling locations and some that are less. And I'm not sure if it would make sense to put them at the really busy ones or to put them at the really slow ones, but we'd have to think through that. But if that's something that the council wants to look through, I can start working on putting something like that together for you. To be perfectly honest though, if you're not comfortable moving forward, I'd rather do all or nothing and just say, okay, this isn't for our community. If the state mandates it, we'll have to reconsider. I can understand that. I'd really rather not kind of have the inability to move forward with all of them, if that makes sense.
And this is the type that the state would require, like there's no other.
Yep, they have
Type.
one supplier with 2 kind of different versions of the Badger books, but from what I understand, they do the same thing. It's just kind of how many motherships you have versus not motherships, and I have Tony, thank goodness.
not bad for 10 months on the job.
Yeah, thank you.
You're kind.
Thank you very much. Early voting begins October 25th.
Yep,
so
October
Tuesday.
25th to November 4th. Yep, people can come on in and see us. Yes.
It's getting kind of late for folks to request absentee, I'm guessing.
By law, they have until the Thursday before November 3rd. Please don't wait till then. But yes, if you send us your request, we would put it in the mail for you. However, you have to get it, fill it out, and return it to us by election day in order for that vote to count. So, yeah, the sooner the better if you wish to use the mail process.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
So we're going a little out of order now. We're gonna bring in Administrative Services, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Before Mr. Fitzpatrick starts, since we're at that page on the ARPA list on page 37 and 38, can I just review those real quickly with you, just so you have an understanding what's in there? So page 37, all the blue items, you, in 2 rounds last year, you approved projects back on October 26th of 2021, and part of the appropriation process in November, you approved another round of, and this is just the infrastructure of the 75% amount that's up on the top. So the 75% is $15 million. That's our starting point. What I have on page 38 is a list of the infrastructure projects that I'm recommending for 2023. The light yellow, you just heard, starting with Badger Books that you just heard Jesse talk about, all the way down to the kind of brighter orange, and it should be asphalt pavement preservation program of $250,000. That was all in your capital improvement plan. So those projects were in there. The 2 orange colored ones, the network switches really aren't a CIP or a capital improvement plan project, but it's something we're looking for ARPA. And you're going to hear a little bit from Tony, I would imagine a little bit about the fiber optics installation from Station 19 to the county. That technically was not in the CIP program, but we think it should be included with your consideration for ARPA projects. The lighter tan collars, starting with the business bartender license at $24,000 down to the Badger Book storage of $24,000. Those were initial requests into the operating budget, but because of the impact on the property tax levy, those were taken out of individual departments' requests from their departments and moved into this list for ARPA. And Councilmember Mugrauer has kind of forwarded a couple of notes about a couple other projects that he doesn't think we should be thinking should be financed with debt. So we might be adding to this list a little bit more. I made a preliminary estimate for 2024 in the light green at the bottom portion, just to kind of give you a flavor for, these are all, again, all projects that were anticipated to be funded by debt, but I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. And so bottom line is, if you were to agree with my recommendations for 2023 and 2024, we're still looking at about $438,000 remaining of our $15 million ARPA allocation. So hopefully that you were able to follow that. And again, if you have any specific questions, you can give them to us today. And if it's somebody that from a department that's already been here, we can certainly ask that question. But that's how this list is formatted right now. Does not include the 25% for social programs that I believe the city manager just.
Yeah, the non-infrastructure purposes, I've given you a summary of what we have allocated to date and the balance left. And we've pretty much, we've allocated about half our funds. In both cases, they need to be at least identified or allocated, not spent, by the end of 2024. So I think it's important, even though the money is, you look at Russ's number, his number is running out, it needs to be expended by, or it needs to be
Committed.
Committed, thank you,
Committed.
that's the best term, committed by the end of 24. So we've got about, as he said, under $500,000 that's right now on paper committed through 2024, so we're in decent shape there. And the non-infrastructure, I expect that before year end, I'll probably have another $500,000 that I might be recommending. So we'd still have $2 million left after that. Again, you'll have 2 more years to do that, and that'll certainly be at your discretion. And again, looking to see what else comes up over the next 2 years as well.
Question on the Museum items, I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later, tomorrow. But, do these dollar amounts that are recommended in there equal to, it would seem to me that it's significantly more than what the museum lost during COVID. Is that, do we have kind of, I guess, that idea of that number,
Yes.
that the revenue was down?
And the city manager also shared his concerns with that with me. Jennifer and I are required to submit documentation to the U.S. Treasury, and we actually have had to do a preliminary report right now. We actually have 3 years' worth of lost revenue. Rough estimate on my part right now is I think I can justify all $15 million in the lost revenue category without impacting the other categories that were identified by the Department of Treasury.
And to more specifically to your question, we don't treat each department as a separate entity. Russ is looking at it on a global basis. But roughly 100,000 a year, so it would be museum. If you wanted to count sponsorships that were lost, especially since 2020 was supposed to be the big year of the Titanic exhibit and things like that, we did roll that exhibit over and then the White Christmas one, but maybe another 50,000. So tops 150,000. But Russ has already factored that in to his 15 million. So it's there.
It's just
so
under $1 million though for the museum.
I would say, well, yeah, lost revenue nowhere near $1 million.
Again, most of the things were requested through the capital planning process. And I think, as you heard earlier, city manager and myself have really struggled with, how much more debt do we want to take on? And we kind of try to temper that when we made our requests on facilities and facilities improvements and future debt issuance. And we have this tool that's available to us right now. So we kind of thought that would be a good shift into the ARPA category.
Well, a lot of this was about, it wasn't about replacing the loss. It was addressing longstanding needs that continually were unfunded or underfunded for a lot of the spaces, right? I mean,
Yep.
if just a basic question, if you don't mind, because everything else seems pretty self-explanatory on your colorful page, but business bartender license, 24,000 for ARPA funding. What?
That is a new software.
Oh, okay.
Jesse should have brought that one up too. She was so focused on elections.
Tony can explain that.
Like, are we covering,
Tony
are we
might know a
covering the
little bit.
costs, or but?
Yeah, that's actually coming out of my area. Currently, we have a pre-2000 software system in place that we can't support. It was built internally. We can't even maintain it any longer, and it needs replacement. This proposal is actually bringing it into, if you know, the InfoVision Evolve system that we use for permitting and special events planning. It's the same software system. It's another module for the business and bartender licensing tracking.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Good timing to be.
Perfect.
All right, John, all yours now.
All right. I think council knows administrative services encompasses a variety of different functional areas: human resources, benefits, organizational development, and then that's Michelle's responsibility, and we'll be talking about that first. We'll just go with the page numbers. I think it'll be a lot easier for everybody. And then information technology, Tony is responsible for all network activity, all of our connectivity, to include fiber networks. GIS, you've heard a little bit about that earlier from Kelly and some of the other departments, so we can talk a little bit about that. Central services is in charge of all the duplicating, the mail services, all those sorts of things. And then John Urban is in charge of general services, and he's responsible for purchasing, facilities maintenance, Oshkosh Media, a variety of different insurances. So I think that's it in a nutshell. Am I missing anything? No? Okay. All right, well, let's start with human resources. and they can be found on page 89. So Michelle, do you just want to talk a little bit about what's going on in HR, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Tony. From an overall accomplishment standpoint in human resources, we did conduct a full classification and compensation study this year, which we are continuing to wrap up. We have continued to work on our diversity, equity, and inclusion development, including the formation of an employee DEI group. We also researched and implemented some alumni outreach programs this year. Of course, lots more going on in HR, but those were some of our accomplishments. For 2023, obviously, our intent will be to implement the class and compensation study, which I'm sure we'll be talking to this group about later on. To continue our diversity, equity, and inclusion employee development and education. And of course, we are continually looking at better ways to do things, including evaluating our performance evaluation system and making sure it aligns with our classification and compensation study outcomes. So those are some of the things we're looking at for 2023. Overall, from a personnel standpoint, we're the same. And the overall HR budget is really not increasing. We had some additional costs in 2022 for the compensation study that obviously will not be repeated in 23, which is why you'll actually see a slight decrease in the 2023 proposed budget for the human resources division. Now,
The only other thing I guess I would add to what Michelle summarized, I know the mayor asked earlier about how are we doing with telecommuting? So I have to confess that that policy is stuck on my desk. Michelle already drafted it, but I went to a conference earlier this year in San Antonio that had some interesting considerations related to employee safety and risk management that they recommended that we incorporate into the policy. So I haven't had an opportunity to do that, and I wanted to make sure we did a good job with it. Our goal is to try to have it ready for City Manager Roloff to take a look at so we could potentially implement it January 1. So that's kind of the timetable for that.
So that would be like a flex policy or something?
It would allow people the opportunity to telecommute, so they would have the opportunity, certain classifications would have the opportunity to work from home remotely. There are some classifications, obviously, with our type of workforce where it's just not going to be possible, and I think our employees understand that. It's kind of analogous to our inclement weather policy. Sometimes when we have bad weather, it's a reminder today that it's coming, unfortunately, and so when we have that kind of a situation, we communicate our policy to our employees, and they understand that, for continuous service operations, that, they don't have an opportunity to maybe make up their time or not come to work. So just like that sort of a policy with positions that work in a specialized area, like, for example, our treatment plants, or are engaged in protective services like police and fire, or maybe it's their job to welcome the public in a receptionist type activity. It's just not going to be possible for them to work at home. But if we can, for those positions and classifications that we think might be possible, we want to explore that, with some reasonable limits, because we think it's something that is obviously attractive to employees right now. But we want to make sure that it's reasonable, because our purpose is to serve the public, so that's always primary. So, anything else, Michelle? Did you want to talk? Yes, talk about the DEI committee approached us about the addition of a DEI coordinator, and I know Michelle has been working with their chair and other folks on that. So do you want to talk a little bit about their desire to seek funding for a position?
Absolutely. So, yes, I have been working with the DEI committee and mostly communicating with the chair due to the, I guess, urgency to get some information together for this budget process. And basically, the DEI committee has requested an addition of a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator position. And just a couple of sentences on, what we thought that would look like is the position will partner with the City of Oshkosh staff, businesses, community groups, elected officials, and boards and commissions to assess internal and community needs, promote and participate in DEI planning events, serve as a subject matter expert for staff and for the community regarding DEI-related issues, and develop and execute DEI initiatives internally and within the community. Just as a little summary of what we discussed that this position would look like.
Do you want to share, is there a copy of the description you can share with council or to think about just this process? What you just read?
Oh.
Are there copies that, or
I
an
didn't-
email or
yeah,
something?
I
that
certainly can do that. We just had put it on our
Okay.
enhancement form that we submitted, but I can certainly get copies out to everyone on that.
Is there, maybe this is more of a Mark question, I guess what's the logic for putting it in HR as opposed to having it in your office or somewhere else?
I think this person would report to Mr. Fitzpatrick under administrative services, not necessarily HR. Michelle is the current staff liaison to DEI, so she worked on it, and so that's why it's coming from hers. But I would envision this person would report directly to the assistant city manager.
And that budget is actually part of the HR budget, the administrative services director, so it would probably still land in this budget, I would think.
What would happen if it was in the council and city manager budget? I think other cities have done that, that the reporting structure was, no offense, to city manager and council.
It would not report to the city council. That would be in violation of our code. All city employees report to me. But the reason I would have that person report to Mr. Fitzpatrick's position is that Mr. Fitzpatrick is responsible for our performance management system, and part of the code for the DEI committee is to have performance measures related to KPIs, and Mr. Fitzpatrick could coordinate all of those under one umbrella, and that's why I think the performance management end of things really dictates that.
It's certainly Mark's, prerogative, and I would just add to what he said, one of the things that we do in administrative services is serve all the other departments. So it'd be very easy for this person then to have connectivity with all the other departments, just like you folks do as division managers. And in regard to, and no offense to city manager Roloff, but he's got 12 direct reports right now. I have 3. So it would help balance the workload a little bit. And I communicate with Mr. Roloff frequently. So I'll have an opportunity to talk to him about initiatives that could apply to the entire organization. So that was some of the rationale associated with it.
In an ideal building world, if you take a look at what our building is looking like with a new city hall, administrative services and the city manager's office would be really unified. And I'm not, and Mr. Fitzpatrick's very comfortable with me going to his division heads, particularly, Michelle and lesser Tony and John, but I've talked to them regularly, and I would envision I would be speaking with the diversity coordinator on a very, very regular basis.
Sounds logical. Just curious.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you think that description's final? And I only ask this because just putting a bug in your ear, I think it would be really, one of the ways that I think that these positions get pigeonholed is they take too narrow of a definition of what equity means, right? They don't just take it for what it is, fairness and delivery of services. And I wonder if there might be a position there for just a statement or something there that identifies the fact that they're They're trying to identify efficiencies within the organization and eliminate waste within the organization. I would argue that by definition is inequitable if we're not spending the people's money and resources
I agree.
in a fair way. I think that that would be an important thing too, especially if you're going to have an organization-wide focus.
I agree. And in all fairness, the position description hasn't been developed for this position yet. It's just the budget form document that we use to provide enhancements.
However, from the 2017 study that was done on the diversity coordinator, I believe there were a handful, and it's a bit dated, admittedly, but there were a handful of positions and descriptions that were compared in that study that perhaps could be information now. Is that correct, Mr.?
Oh, I wouldn't necessarily rely on that because like you said, it's a little dated, but certainly take a look at what some best practices are currently, because I would say in the last 5 years, these positions have evolved quite a
Changed.
bit.
Sure.
And I think there'll probably be some new perspective on it. One of the things that I've explained as I've talked to departments about this is that I really view this person as much as a diversity consultant as, in some places view it as a diversity enforcer. And I think that would send a negative statement. I view HR, while they have a regulatory role within our organization, they're to serve the departments. Similarly with finance, and I think Russ has done an outstanding job of not being as regulatory and being more consulting, how you can put a financial lens on everything you do in your department. Similarly, I would envision this coordinator doing, helping departments put a diversity, equity lens on what they do, because they may not think of it in a certain way, but there are sometimes I have and Russ can be sitting in the room and a department head will be talking to me, and it's clearly they're not considering the financial aspects of it, and Russ is ready to leap out of the chair, but then at the same time he'll say, but at the same time it's like, but have you considered this? Oh, I never thought of that. And one would think that it's very obvious that somebody should be looking at a financial aspect to it. And not everybody does. Similarly, not everybody puts an equity lens, and I think they're doing a better job of learning it. But even through the process of the KPIs was a good eye-opener for the departments. And I think this would be an eye-opener. Somebody to help them get to being more equitable and being more inclusive. A lot of our departments don't have a lot of diversity. Why is that? That rather than being accusatory, how can I help you become more diverse and inclusive? Oh, I never thought of it that way. And once everybody has that relationship with a department that's focused on DEI, I think we can get some good stuff done.
Just another quick comment on, we have 16 different budget enhancements that was presented in your revision this morning. Departments usually do, and what Michelle is reading from is their request form to the city manager and myself when we do our internal staff meetings on the budget. For budget purposes, we've decided just to give you a summary so we could have a discussion and dialogue, and if you want further information or go down those paths, we can do that, but we didn't print out all 16 of the requests. We just gave you a summary page.
Most of it's financial anyway, but certainly, yeah, if you want to dive deeper, we can certainly take a look at some things.
I personally would like to see the DEI, the GIS, and the sustainability manager descriptions.
That is certainly an appropriate discussion for about 24 hours from now. So
That's
I will
fine.
keep note of those, though. Thank you.
Any other questions about HR or that enhancement that we can help you with?
Did you, anything about the tuition reimbursement program, how that's going? Is that?
You want to talk about that, Michelle?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we are gaining momentum, I believe, in the tuition reimbursement, which we call Employee Development Program. To date, we are still very well funded. We have had Now, I got to remember my own information. I think 9 participants so far. We have some that are actively going through. We got a little bit of a slow start in 2021. As you know, we didn't actually approve that until March. So by the time some people started looking at it and looking at going to school, it was a little bit slower start than I was expecting.
Took a while for them to get into their programs, so.
Right.
So we have only spent less than 10,000 of the allocated amount. So I feel we are very well funded for the near future, but definitely getting more and more interest from our employees every day.
I guess I would add, Michelle's done a lot of good work with the departments creating career ladders. And, another thing that is done in HR is to create career steps. So maybe in a counterpart pay range where they can go up on a career ladder and then move over on a step and then continue their career advancement in another job family. So one of the things that we look at as part of the classification and compensation study is the job families and how those counterpart pay ranges interact to provide the most mobility we can for our employees. So that's something I think that the point I'm trying to make is that it could drive more interest after the class and comp study is finalized and people can maybe see a clearer path to their future. So, but we certainly appreciate council's support of that program, and I know the employees do too. So thank you.
So under the recruitment and attractiveness of, or the challenges that have been experienced as far as recruiting and retaining, we now have this somewhat recent, the education or the development piece. There's a telecommuting policy coming. As we're trying to fill spots like between now and the beginning of next year, and those discussions are being had, and folks might be asking, what is your telecommuting policy? We just aren't addressing that then as far as like that attraction piece right now until we have that in place. Is that right?
Right. We have told candidates, I think, that policy is under development, but it isn't a final product yet.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and in regard to, recruitment and retention of employees, the classification and compensation study is also a big piece of that too. So once we can get that in place, I think, that'll go a long way to continue our competitiveness. So, anything else about HR? Okay, the next budget is purchasing. That's on page 109. And that's John's area. John, I'll let you take it away.
Well, we had another exciting year in purchasing.
Yes.
We act as a resource for departments in helping acquire the goods and services they need. We like to be involved early in the process as much as we can so that we can get a good understanding of what folks need and how we can get the most competitive price for things. We help people with everything from, widgets to large vehicles and more. So it runs the gamut. As far as 2022, some of the projects that we are most significant, we worked with getting the revolving fund integrated into the enterprise asset management program at Tyler, working with the departments and IT on that. As I said before, we had plenty of various projects of purchasing things through the 2022 CIP, everything from equipment to vehicles. We did work with the attorney's office to amend the 1210 of the municipal code related to bid protests. That's something we've been looking to do for a couple of years. And as always, we're excited to get more cross-training done internally with our purchasing procedures and processes, so that was good as well. As far as next year, some of the bigger projects we've got on our plate, we're going to be helping the library get the rooftop units completed. They have about 20 units on that roof, and we did about half of them a few years ago, so we have to complete the other half, replacing those coming up here. We're also in the middle of getting the rooftop units replaced at the convention center right now. That was awarded, so that's going to be a big project. And supply chain has always been an issue in the last couple of years, so we're going to continue to work with departments to find other sources and continue to manage that as best we can. I'm sure you're well aware of challenges in your own life you've seen with supply chain, things like that. So that's something that I don't know when that's gonna go away, but we certainly are working with departments to find other sources wherever possible and work with vendors. Speaking of working with vendors, whenever we can, we keep those lines of communication open with vendors to make sure that they're always coming to the table and being involved. We have our online Demand Star to have them register for free. It's very easy, and that's been going well. So yeah, it's been a pretty productive year again, and I expect that to continue next year. As far as the budget itself, not a lot of change there. It's kind of a status quo as far as personnel and cost control. Expand on that.
Just a question, John. Do we have an idea of like what percentage of our vendors and that or our local labor, either regionally local or within state?
We don't have any data to say exactly, but I would say most of our vendors tend to be local because of our history working with them over the years, but I don't have any hard data to track that. I don't really have anything to specify.
Anything else? Purchasing?
Did you want to talk about your budget enhancement?
Both of those are in facilities,
Yep.
if you want me to jump ahead, or?
Or you can wait, I'm sorry.
Wait till facilities. So the next budget is information technology, and that's Tony's area, and Tony, take it.
As John had indicated, my areas of responsibility are GIS, central services, and IT. 2022 was a very challenging year for us. As many know, we actually replaced our entire telephone system from the ground up. The core of the old system was here before I was, so it's very overdue. Appreciate his support. So we've got a new state-of-the-art phone system. The implementation was about 6 months into planning, and then the whole system was actually implemented over a weekend. A lot of dedicated staff working on getting all that done, and it was a monumental task with very few hitches along the way. We also deployed new GIS infrastructure, so the backbone of our GIS that we are currently migrating our data to is brand new and also state-of-the-art. So we will be continuing to migrate that going into 2023, and that's probably going to be about a 5-year migration, given the large volume of data that we have to structure and migrate. And then, as you may or may not have heard from other departments, we implemented a new enterprise asset management system, which encompassed inventory and work orders. It has not been met with a few challenges along the way, given all the disparate systems and processes that had to culminate into one system. So it met its challenges that we are still to this day working through, but we will get there. A lot of things come to light when you start to put everything into one systematic enterprise. Going into 2023, we're going to continue with the GIS integrations. There's kind of a theme with GIS that it is going to be touching everything. When you get your spatial representations of all the city assets, it becomes very large. The mayor's shaking her head. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then we'll continue the expansion of network infrastructure to other city-owned facilities, which we will talk about a little bit more when we get to the CIP portion.
I think you heard earlier, Kelly Kniforth was very gracious talking about, her support for a GIS technician. And so it's my expectation, it's city manager's expectation that, our department serves all the others, and we work very closely with them. And as she indicated, Jeff Now's job in regard to planning is continually expanding, and the demands for the organization associated with GIS also continue to expand. So in terms of how can we efficiently manage that function and best serve the organization, it didn't make a lot of sense to have that fragment of GIS remain in Jeff's job, which is why we're seeking support for that GIS technician position that she talked about. Another thing that we talk about in HR all the time is support for a position like that. There There currently are several people that work in GIS, and to have someone work separated from the rest of those professionals makes it difficult for them to do their job. So I think having a position consolidated in GIS is really something that would benefit our organization greatly. And I think those individual staff members, and Tony, you want to just talk a little bit more about that? If I missed anything?
Well, you were pretty comprehensive in discussing. That was one of the budget enhancements that we had submitted, and that will certainly alleviate a lot of the workload that is in both engineering, planning, community development. Right now, there are a lot of things that are just getting backlogged because there are frankly not the staff to do it any longer. The workload goes up and the staffing does not. You create this sort of opportunity. And what I'm looking at is solving that, working with engineering, community development, planning. We have more than enough workload for this GIS technician to handle, and we have the space to accommodate it in the GIS wing up here on 4th floor, which you may or may not have seen where central services used to be. So we've got the facilities to accommodate this position. We definitely have the organizational need for this position, and we are taking the right steps to get to 2022 with GIS.
And I would add too, I think, for those folks who aren't familiar with what GIS is, I mean, it's really a geographically based data set that allows an organization to be able to access records and uses a tool for a whole variety of things. Tony mentioned engineering, community development, but really almost every part of our organization uses GIS. Most importantly, our protective services areas use GIS. So it really is, I guess when you think about, I know you're going to have some very difficult decisions to make regarding staffing. They're all worthwhile, but I think, when you support a position like this, you really support all the departments by seeing your way to support this. Anything else, Tony?
And that's the GIS request that we made. I think we've hit that pretty good.
I guess the only other enhancements, we're on the topic of enhancements related to information technology, and it was discussed a little bit earlier by Finance Director Van Gompel. One of Tony's responsibilities also is fiber connectivity throughout the city. And we undertook a project really in 1998 as partners with the Oshkosh Area School District, University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, I think Fox Valley Technical College. We had a joint fiber expansion project, and then that went forward until 2002, I think, where we
2002 was the last phase of the fiber expansion.
And so we have a pretty robust fiber network, but since that time, the city has acquired additional buildings, and we haven't been able to connect to all those buildings. So primarily the ones that, we're interested in providing fiber access to now are Sawyer Street facility, which will be the future emergency operations center. We believe that that's critical to have that fiber located there. And also Pollock Community Water Park. Right now, it's served by a service that it relies on telephone technology, and that copper cable or the copper wire there is not being serviced and is disintegrating. So, but more importantly, getting to that side of town provides us an opportunity to expand to other areas of the city. As you know, Oshkosh Avenue is really improved. We have Lake Shore building that exists out there. We have a lot of signalization, and without involving Scooter and having him talk about all the projects that he has, because I don't know if we'd have enough time for that.
That's coming from Fitz, I'm just saying.
He has the opportunity to use that fiber for our electrical traffic signalization as we expand in that area, and the city continues to expand north and northwest. So the fiber projects that we have, that's one. We'd like to go from Sawyer Street to Pollock.
Is that the one that's in ARPA?
I'm
Is
sorry?
that the one that's in ARPA?
Yep, that's the one that's in ARPA.
Participation 19?
That it's already in the CIP. The second one is a new opportunity, and Tony, as I mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention, we have one fire station 19, that doesn't have fiber network connectivity on Snell Road. And as luck would have it, the county is involved in a project where they're going to be working on fiber in that locale. And so we have an opportunity to work with them jointly and cut our costs in half. We can utilize their project to be able to access Station 19. And then virtually every facility that we have will have fiber connectivity and will be poised for the future to extend beyond those areas. Tony, you want to say anything else about those?
Put the microphone, yeah, you gotta say something now, the microphone's in front of you.
Yeah, now that he's covered all the locations that we want to put the fiber to, the last thing, which again wasn't planned, was the Station 19 run. When I talked to the IT director over at the county, and she approached me about a joint venture because they're literally going right past Station 18, which is over on Murdoch and Bowen. They're going right past there, all the way out to Snell, and then out to the sheriff's department. So it is the perfect opportunity to literally cut our costs in half to put that fiber in. And we would put in enough fiber that as Scooter expands his traffic signal network, the fiber is available, and he can actually interconnect from those facilities and run the additional fiber he needs from those endpoints to further expand his traffic signal network.
I'll add one thing. I want to correct one minor thing that they talked about. The request was for Station 19 with some initial ARPA, and I did not support it because it was being proposed from Station 17 to Station 19, a single run. It was going to cost, $500,000.
600.
So it just was cost prohibitive. The fact that we waited until the county had the discussion about wanting to serve the jail does give us a great opportunity. Plus, and the other one that sold me even on the Sawyer and Pollock pool, because I think there's some other options that we did look at for Pollock pool, but given the fact that we're already, we only have to go from the transit center to get to Sawyer Street. So it's a pretty short run. It's a relatively short run to go from Sawyer Street to get to Pollock, but then it's also a very short run to get up to the intersection of Westfield and Oshkosh Avenue. Then we can start doing, interconnect our traffic signals through fiber, which gives us great ability to do better coordination of traffic signals. So there's a great deal of benefit to that. And then we can also run it up Sawyer to the eventual new intersection at Sawyer and Oshkosh Avenue. So there's several opportunities for us to do this without having to do that super long run through a lot of, quite frankly, a lot of dead space between Station 17 and Station 19. So it's a much better value than it ever was.
It's really a win-win because we're not duplicating costs that the county is duplicating, so it's a better deal for the taxpayers. And, we very much appreciate the support the council has provided us in regard to facilities. We work very hard to talk about planning for facilities going forward and all that infrastructure, and the council has been leading us, with working on those plans. I guess I kind of view this, and I know Tony does too, and I think City Manager Roloff and Finance Director Van Gompel, that this is an infrastructure project. It's not a building per se, but to have the city set up with this kind of fiber connectivity structurally, it really poises us to continue to be successful going forward. So I would ask that you just think about it in that kind of context. Anything else for IT? Any questions you might have of Tony? Okay. Well, the next budget is on 117. It's insurance. And that is an area that we have our safety and risk management coordinator, Paul Greener, who's in Michelle's division. So, Michelle, you want to talk a little bit about that?
So obviously, this budget entails all of the different insurances that we carry for the city, such as our buildings and content and our cyber, as well as workers' compensation costs. So, obviously, in 2022, we've been reviewing insurance requirements from our external vendors. Again, just making sure we have a solid methodology there. And in 2023, of course, we're looking at new property vehicle equipment purchases and making sure we have a good methodology procedure for that. So as he mentioned, this is managed by our safety and risk officer, Paul Greeninger.
Does this include, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Does this also include our workers' compensation insurance?
Yeah, well, there is a line item for this to be basically allocated from the departments. So it does have a line item here, but we have a whole nother workers' compensation fund that we'll be talking about toward the end.
This represents the workers' comp just for general fund expenditures. We don't departmentalize it. We put it all into this category for all of the general fund expenditures.
Thank you. So, as you can see, there is a slight increase this year on total expenses. Again, the largest is workers' comp. Obviously, that continues to be a challenging area with healthcare costs. Other than that, I guess, you don't have all the line items, but cyber insurance is going up this year, and that's probably making most of our increased cost is the cyber increase. But overall, 7.43% increase on the insurance budget.
Is that related to our history of needing that policy, or is that just an across-the-board thing?
My understanding is across the world, those insurances are increasing significantly because of the increased cyber attacks that organizations are seeing.
I think it's a little
I
bit
was-
of both. I think our cyber hit in 2020, that's part of our experience. So there's the experience end, and then there's the overall trend. We're getting hit on both regards.
We are, but I would say, I think after that circumstance, we had an opportunity to really provide all kinds of different enhancements. And that was something we worked with our insurance company on, as well as consultants. They worked very closely with Tony. So I think from a preparation perspective and a future security perspective, I think we're in much better shape than we have been. And I don't know if you want to touch on any of that, Tony.
No, as John said, we're in a better place, and we continue to assess our posture regularly, because Lord knows we don't want to have that occur again. And the better we make our network, the better the threat actors are, so we continue a circle that we'll continue to address year after year.
Thank you.
Anything else on insurance?
Well, it might be good to go to page 411 for the workers' comp fund, since we're talking about insurance.
Okay.
And honestly, we're gonna have to, if council wants to take a break before 3:30, we're gonna have to take it about a quarter after, 20 after, so that we make sure we have Chief Smith hooked up and everything. I want to make sure we don't have any technical glitches.
I think we've really covered quite a bit of it on 411, or workers' comp. It's just a separate budget. Russ talked a little bit about how it's constructed. We charge the other departments. They all have their share. So it's very difficult to project with workers' comp, because with workers' comp, there's such a large time frame when claims can be processed. But we continue to work at that. We continue to try to implement as many safety programs and training programs as we can. And it might be a good segue when we get a chance to go back to facilities maintenance. That's the next area that we would talk about, and some of the things that we're putting in place in regard to just employee safety and security.
There is an enhancement with workers' comp.
You want to talk about
Wait,
that?
before you go to the enhancement. All right, so I'm a little confused. So if we go back to the insurance page where we have that line item for workers' comp that doubled from 2020 to 2020, the projection for 23. But then my question here is on this one on 413, where would revenue be coming from for workers' comp if that's claims due to like injuries?
The revenue is all as Russ mentioned, we each department contributes to the fund, so we budget in each individual department, and then that revenue supports this budget. Is that
So for
correct?
example, you see on page 118 where the cost to the general fund is 572.
Right.
And then on the top line, on the workers' comp budget, shows 985,000. 572 of that 985 is from the general fund. All of the other funds contribute to that fund to make up the balance of that. So
Okay.
we have a little workers' comp insurance business running inside the city. The largest customer is the general fund. But
Gotcha.
it's still only about 2/3 of it.
Right.
It's a pretty substantial operation when you think
We're
of
kind of glossing
recycling.
over it pretty quickly, so if you have any questions, Mark's right. We are self-funded for our workers' comp. We have an extra, what we call stop-loss policy that protects the city from any catastrophic costs that we pay for. But we are our own insurance company as it relates to workers' comp, and then health insurance that we've talked about with the council in some of our budget hearings.
If you go to page 413, Mr. Greener and I have spent many hours together about this, plus since I'm on the league insurance board and we now have workers' comp insurance through league insurance, because they were able to accommodate us. But take a look at that line item about halfway down the page, 6412.
I was just looking at that.
We're partially self-insured. That's before we hit our limit. So we, for example, paid out in 2020 over $800,000 in claims before we tapped insurance, before we tapped what's called our stop loss. And you may recall we had a very unfortunate incident with a police officer back in 2020. So that number's there, and there were several others. I don't want to just focus on one because it's never about one. And Russ is probably laughing because he's probably looking at the multitude of other ones.
Yeah, one of them's me.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right, that's right. He slipped on ice during strategic planning. Long story. Yeah, it was strategically
Two
planned.
strategic plans ago.
So we had, our numbers put our fund in the red, and we had to restore it. You'll see further up on the 2021 actuals, transfer from other funds, $388,000. You may recall, we asked council to approve a transfer from a special fund that was pretty much reached the end of its life, and we had about $500,000 in there. We used $388,000 of it to bail out the workers' comp fund because it was doing so poorly. So the rates have gone up. Our internal business is charging the general fund nearly, or is twice of what they paid just a few years ago, and it's because of our claims history. And we have to make sure that our workers' comp fund business center stays
Solvent.
solvent. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. So it was, and you see the claims. We used to budget when I was working on Paul and this probably 10 years ago. We were budgeting about $400,000 in that account that says the contractual services agreements. Now we're paying $675,000 to $700,000, not including the bad year we had in 2020. We really got to keep our eye on that. So it's something that we can't just say, well, let's lower the rates to help save the general fund money, because then this business center will implode on itself. It won't be solvent, as Fitz said. We have to make sure that it stays solvent. And I think the numbers we have here, I think we've got some confidence, that we've got enough. Not excessive by any stretch, but we've got enough to start managing what we expect. A normal claims year is going to be $600,000 to $700,000.
It is a pretty big number, and we have the benefit of the assistance of City Manager Roloff, Finance Director Van Gompel, when we're looking at this budget to try to project it, because it's difficult to predict.
The reason I kind of zero in on this is I seem to remember back in 2016 when I first came on council, we were voting on, and I could be wrong because I might be mixing it up with 2007 when my husband was on council, but the discussions about getting our workers' compensation down by like our automated, because we had a high rate with like the sanitation trucks and things like that. So whatever, I know this is years ago, but whatever gains from the automation, it it hasn't really kept up with us.
Oh,
Is that
The
accurate?
the market is just drastically different, and I'll just give you one
Okay.
tagline from a TV commercial, one call, that's all. They also do workers' comp. And a lot of people are going to attorneys
Okay.
for workers' comp claims, and all they have to do is go to Paul Greening, and Paul Greening will take care of them. But there's a solution that's out there in the market that you need an attorney to handle your workers' comp claims.
Right, and Mark's, very accurate, and I don't want to dissuade anyone from talking to attorneys, but, Wisconsin is a no-fault worker compensation state. It created a worker compensation system so employees and their employers would not be at odds with each other. So it's prescribed statutorily, if someone has an injury, or maybe has a severe injury where they may lose a limb, it's prescribed in state law precisely what their settlement is. So there's very limited opportunities for people to go beyond that, but they're just not aware of that. So,
So the state of Wisconsin actually rates each municipality based on industry standards or other communities, and they develop an experience modification. And so the more you do for loss control and loss prevention, everybody should be at an experience mod of 1. To be honest with you, I don't know what our experience mod is right now, but each individual unit of government then is charged, either gets a discount or is charged a premium if their claims are over and above the standard by this experience modification.
because there's a responsibility to support the fund that we just described too. It's not just this budget, it's the statutory budget.
But we don't know where we rank in
Our
comparison.
mod
right off
rate
the
is-
top. Yeah.
Our mod rate has typically been below 1, so we've done really well. But it's
Yeah.
a continuous process.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but it's, the industry has just gotten worse. I can tell you that with respect to refuse, for example, it had a dramatic improvement. And anytime we've had a workers' comp claim, it's when those guys step off the truck. And keeping them on the truck is the most important thing we can do. So it's usually that, somebody left something to be picked up that's not in the garbage truck or not in the garbage bin, so they have to get off. And they get off and it's the middle of winter and they step on a piece of ice and go whoosh, or it's heavy or something like that. But typically it's dismounting the vehicle. So if they're safe, the worst thing they can do is get a little carpal tunnel, because we have a joystick that they operate the garbage truck with a joystick. It's pretty low impact, but doggone it,
Compared to the old days.
the minute they step off that darn truck, it just creates a problem.
Well, if we could, I know you're queuing up PD, but we could just talk about, real briefly, about the page ahead of this one, Internal Service Benefit Fund, and Police and Fire Commission, then Michelle doesn't need to come back.
Okay.
So page
Sounds good.
409, that really just is a placeholder for our health insurance and some of our other consulting services. So there's really not much there. I know we've talked about our health insurance with council at quite great length. We're ready for the process of doing our open enrollment. We've communicated the increase to them. We've made the plan design changes for 2023 that we discussed with you. So, I think we're doing okay.
Did you mention the Police and Fire Commission also?
And the Police and Fire Commission is the other budget. What's the page number on that, Michelle?
That's way up front.
Okay.
It's 0100 0290, so.
Page 143.
143.
And I did put in a slight increase, basically, there are increased costs for the background checks, there's increased costs for, pre-employment. Oh, I'm sorry. So the Police and Fire Commission budget is basically for all the pre-employment costs for our police and fire hires. So we're talking background checks, pre-employment, screening, et cetera. And of course, we are seeing an increase in retirements, which causes us to have additional hiring. So I did ask for a slight increase in this budget, again, just to cover the hiring levels we have and the, obviously slightly increased costs for the pre-employment screenings.
And this is a good segue to police. They're our next budget. Unless you have any other questions about Police and Fire Commission, we work very closely with the chiefs to try to get an idea of, we don't require people to tell us, of course, when they're thinking about retiring, but if they're willing to do that so we can get ahead of the process a little bit, it helps, and, most employees are very cooperative with that. So it's based on our best assessment.
Our estimates with, working with the fire chief and the police chief.
Will I take a quick break before we get Chief Smith
Sure.
on?
Yeah, let's take 5 minutes, because then we'll be right at 3:30.
The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming.
I need to crank him so you can hear him.
He's ready.
Crank his volume.
Well, hold on.
Dean in here. I guess we'll just give him a second till we hear him.
Have Dean talk.
Yeah.
Dean, say one more thing for us. Fast.
Say one more thing for you? All
Okay.
right.
We're live. Let's go.
Tony was on it.
Police. Chief Smith.
Well, Mayor and Council, thank you very much for, first of all, indulging me on a little remote piece that I have to do. It's just what we got to do. So I want to get started by thanking you once again for the opportunity to meet with you to discuss the department's proposed operating budget 2023.
Hold on, Dean, 1 second.
1 second.
We're going to turn you up just a little bit.
Volume on the computer itself isn't turned up.
Oh, that I do not know.
The sound is
We've got a volume issue.
Okay.
You're at 95%.
That's not the one.
Yeah, that's, yes.
Testing 1, 2.
Volume's on.
Test.
Better. Yes. There we are.
All right. Are we good?
Yeah.
Much better.
Okay.
All right.
You want to start over?
No, I'll go right back into it. So I'd like to highlight some of the initiatives that we've accomplished or are working on for 2022. Our staff development is incredibly important, especially in these challenging times. Training our police officers and our leadership on the best practices of law enforcement is at the forefront of the work that we do administratively. By planning for training in the coming year, we are able to prepare our officers with the best tools available in law enforcement. This in turn provides the most professional police officers that we can for the citizens and visitors of the city of Oshkosh. The department strategically plans our training based on the needs facing the department each year. There are several mandatory trainings that we must perform in order to meet the mission of law enforcement in the community. Some of the topics that we are training on include de-escalation, implicit bias, use of force, crisis intervention, response to mental illness, as well as professional communication. In addition, we have other skills training needs that we must provide in order to provide a professional law enforcement agency. These trainings include instructor development, field training officer, drone team pilot, crisis negotiator, firearms instructors, SWAT training, hostage negotiator training, drug investigator training, criminal investigations, school resource officer training, first line supervisor training for emerging leaders, as well as leadership training for department leaders. All this training requires funding and resources that we must provide in order to be successful in the coming year. In 2022, we expanded this training by adding Virtual Academy online training, which is similar to what some of you may be familiar with through online learning platforms through colleges and universities. Some of you may have seen the recent news story demonstrating the department's virtual reality training. I'm excited to share with you that since the beginning of the year, we've been using virtual reality training for our officers, which provides more scenario-based training to help our officers increase our professionalism, as well as response to various types of calls for service. This has been a huge success and is used often by our officers. The VR training system budget was around $75,000. This was funded completely through generous donations from our community, with no cost to start up the program coming from our tax levy. We continue to have numerous occasions where our officers have been able to use crisis intervention training as well as their de-escalation training to bring situations to a safe resolution. The department successfully conducted our first Youth Leadership Academy over the summer. This program is designed to bring teens together through our community who need someone to believe in them, just that one leg up, as well as teens who are excelling in their academics together. Along with our school resource officers who designed the program, through this academy, the teens learned about our community. They received leadership pointers from the CEO of Oshkosh Defense. They toured Oshkosh Defense facilities. They had the opportunity to work with younger children at the Boys and Girls Club. They also learned about giving back to the community through volunteerism through community projects. Our academy attendees also had an opportunity to do team building and life skills training. The feedback we received from parents and teens alike was amazingly positive. And once again, this was funded through donations from the Community Foundation. The department has also partnered with the Kiwanis Club to stand up the Reading with a Cop program. Several times a year, you will find police officers attending classroom settings in school or at the Boys and Girls Club, where the officers read with the kids and also connect through simple conversations. We believe in building relationships early. That way, they're long-term relationships for our community. We maintain a strong partnership with the Boys and Girls Club throughout the year, supporting them creatively through initiatives that benefit our youth. Our community closet continues to receive support from the community with donations. We use our closet to help those with immediate needs for things such as clothes, toiletries, food, car seats, as well as other basic need items. This is incredibly helpful for our victims of crime, such as domestic assault victims. I spoke with you last year about our relationship with the warming shelter. We have been working with the warming shelter as well as our homeless population to help them day to day, as well as balancing the requests of our citizens who have concerns related to our homeless population. We have spent one-on-one time with our homeless population trying to provide help to them based upon the available services. The homeless population within the city is growing. I think we all know that. The city must begin to work with our community partners to develop programming and responses to the various needs of our homeless. As of September 20th of 2022, the police department has responded to 446 calls for service regarding homelessness. This number actually equates to 892 officer responses, as these calls are a 2-officer response. These calls range from trespassers sleeping in vacant residences, homeless persons causing major damage to park facilities, homeless persons littering in various parks, damaging hotel rooms, persons creating disturbances at the convention center, Michigan Street Canoe Launch, as well as the Leach Amphitheater. Recently, we had a homeless person threatening suicide by hanging onto one of the I-41 bridges, stopping traffic for hundreds of motorists. Members of our business community have called about various complaints associated with this problem. As an example, a business reported numerous occasions of having to remove property of homeless persons from their facilities to include clothing, sleeping bags, and mattresses. Constant cleaning of their facilities due to human waste being deposited, as well as homeless persons responding aggressively when asked to leave private property. We have responded to persons sleeping on our sidewalks. We have also investigated burglaries and other larcenies that were committed by members of our homeless population. The biggest tragedies we find regarding our homeless population is the loss of life that we see due to the plight of these individuals. We have had homeless persons found dead in park facilities, in our waterways, as well as in an abandoned structure. The city has approved of several housing options for our homeless population, which has the potential to invite more homeless persons to our community in the future. We have to be prepared to provide fair and equal services to all of our community, but be mindful of our limits on providing services to the homeless. Solutions are not the city's alone to find. There are currently 6 facilities now established within the city of Oshkosh to provide services to the homeless. All 6 of these are either new or recently renovated. We must work with our county partners as well as our private service providers to help shoulder the service burden that we are facing. Homelessness is a problem that is rooted in many causes. I believe that the most prevailing cause of homelessness is mental health and substance abuse issues. We as a city should lead the effort in bringing together those community partners, both public and private, to work on reducing our homeless population with meaningful actions that do not just provide temporary shelter, but long-term solutions to resolve an individual's cause of being homeless. The police are not the right response for homelessness. Mental health crises occur in our community. Our police officers day in and day out do an outstanding job in negotiating these crises. On October 1st of 2021, the department's first behavioral health officer began his new assignment. This officer was selected from our current patrol staff after a selection process that involved Winnebago County Human Services. Our calls for service regarding mental health issues are still averaging around 6.5% of our total calls for service. We're averaging 89 mental health related calls a month. This equates to the department responding to 1,073 mental health calls for 2022. However, with the addition of our behavioral health officer, as well as the co-funded social worker, we have seen the quality of responses improve greatly. Our co-responder team through July of 2022 has responded to 283 mental health calls. By having this team respond, they have been able to relieve the patrol officers on 230 of these calls. This has been a great help to our patrol officers and allows them time to work on other criminal investigations. During this time, this team has responded to 6 suicides, 18 persons with a weapon, and 46 persons with self-inflicted injuries. We've had 65 involuntary commitments and 90 voluntary commitments. Magic, our therapy dog, has been deployed 101 times during this time frame. During this past spring, officers were dispatched to a teenage female who was intentionally running out into traffic in order to hurt herself. The responding officers were able to find her, but she continued to have an escalated behavior by trying to get away from the officers and running back into traffic. Once the behavioral health team arrived, they began speaking to her and talking about her meeting Magic, our therapy dog. She indicated that she could never hurt a dog, and calmed enough, with Magic on scene, that the officers were able to get her the help that she needed. Within the last 2 months, patrol responded to a male who was barricaded in an attic of a large shed threatening to kill himself. The behavioral health officer responded and negotiated with him for 20 minutes. Eventually, he dropped the knife and came out of the attic. He was found to have made 2 cuts to his neck to harm himself. He was treated at the hospital and safely placed on an emergency detention so as not to further harm himself or others. Most recently, the team was able to talk an individual off of one of our bridges across the Fox River. This person was threatening to jump off the bridge to kill themselves. As you can see, this is a lot of heavy work that they have been addressing here in the city, and they've been very, very successful. I reported to you last year during our budget meeting that we had 10 overdose deaths in the city through July of last year. Through August of this year, we have once again had 10 deaths year-to-date due to drug overdoses. That's 10 families forever changed, forever with a hole that cannot be filled. The faces of these deaths could be a neighbor or a friend, a sister or a brother, a daughter or a son. This doesn't tell the complete story. Through September of this year, the Oshkosh Police Department has investigated 50 overdoses. Between August and September, we had 16 overdoses. Our overdoses are up 28.2% since over 2021. Recently, the Winnebago County Overdose Fatality Review Team published their report for 2021. This report shared that there were 41 overdose deaths in Winnebago County. This is the highest number there has ever been. 21 or 51% of these deaths were in the city of Oshkosh. 39% of the population of Winnebago County resides in the city of Oshkosh, and yet we have 51% of the deaths due to overdoses. Every officer on the street, as well as the fire department, is equipped with Narcan. If this were not the case, our overdose deaths would be tremendously higher. Fentanyl is a lead cause of overdose deaths in Winnebago County. Last year, we took great efforts to provide help for persons suffering from addiction when we stood up our behavioral health team. Additionally, the district attorney's office and the county have several diversion programs to help those suffering from addiction. We now must renew our efforts to combat those who will sell drugs in our community. I want to make Oshkosh a place that makes a drug dealer afraid to come to our city. Our Vice and Narcotics Unit has been working hard to get after drug dealers and human traffickers, and have been very successful, but there's more work that they're unable to handle. Our current Vice and Narcotics Unit is staffed with 3 persons, 2 investigators and a sergeant. It is supported by members of the Criminal Investigations Unit. This should not be the case. Members of CID should be investigating other crimes in the city, but are utilizing their time to assist in the all-important drug investigations. I'm going to share with you some sobering data from just the Vice and Narcotics Unit here in the city of Oshkosh. So far in 2022, our Vice and Narcotics Unit of 3 has handled through August 61 drug investigations. Through these investigations, they've accomplished 57 drug-related arrests, worked on several drug overdoses and deaths, executed 17 drug-related search warrants. Through this activity, the Vice and Narcotics Unit of 3 people has seized numerous quantities of narcotics to include 1,047 grams of cocaine with a street value of $105,000, 188 grams of crack cocaine valued at $28,000, 19 grams of heroin valued at $3,000, 20 pounds of marijuana and wax valued at $30,000, 5,638 grams of methamphetamine valued at $563,900, 103 grams of fentanyl, 550 grams of psilocybin, 3.3 grams of LSD, 17 grams of ketamine. The total street value of these drugs seized by 3 officers is over $730,000 in 8 months. I shared with you that we seized 103 grams of fentanyl. According to the Drug Enforcement Administration, 2 milligrams of fentanyl can kill a person. Our Vice and Narcotics Unit has seized enough fentanyl in 8 months to kill well over 51,000 people. To provide you with an even broader scope of the problem, I will share with you some data from the Lake Winnebago Area Metropolitan Drug Task Force, of which we are a part of, which covers 4 counties in our area. In 2021, LWAM seized approximately 139 grams of fentanyl. Through the 3rd quarter of 2022, LWAM has seized approximately 434 grams of fentanyl. This is a 284% increase in seizures during the same time frame from 2021. This amount of fentanyl seized is enough to kill 434,000 people. What is even more alarming is that the amount of fentanyl crossing our southern border has increased exponentially. According to the DEA, a new emerging threat is the introduction of counterfeit pills that look like Adderall and Xanax. High school and college students are purchasing these counterfeit pills on the dark web or through social media referrals, which market deadly versions of these pills tainted with fentanyl or methamphetamine. Criminal drug markets are mass producing these fake pills and falsely marketing them as legitimate prescription pills to the American market. The DEA reports that these pills are widely available across all 50 states. So far this year, the DEA has seized 20 million fake pills, often laced with fentanyl. This is more than the last 2 years combined. Another emerging drug threat that has now made it to Wisconsin is called W18. W18 is a synthetic opioid. It's 100 times more potent than fentanyl. It is being used as a cutting agent for heroin and cocaine. 2 micrograms of W18 can kill you. I share all this not to scare you, but to tell you that our Vice and Narcotics Unit has more work than they can handle here in the city of Oshkosh. I'm sure you've heard about the catalytic converter thefts in the Oshkosh area. Recently, Cobuson Bus Service could not deliver students to school due to all their buses having their catalytic converter stolen. These converters have an approximate value of nearly $100,000. Our information that we are receiving is that the converters were being stolen by those in the drug trade to purchase narcotics. My vision is to make Oshkosh a place that drug dealers do not want to come to, a place that they fear arrest and incarceration. You will obviously see in your packets an enhancement request for 2 officers so that we can add to our narcotics unit to begin to make this happen. Drug dealers are preying on our citizens, and our citizens are dying. We must go after drug dealers and not make Oshkosh a desired place to sell drugs. We have to stop this. Our crime data for 2022 reflects that through August, assaults in Oshkosh are up 10.2%. This is the driving number of our data related to crimes against persons. Our homicides have dropped from 3 in 2021 to 1 in 2022. Sex offenses are down 12.9% from 85 to 74. Our total increase through August of violent crime is 4.6% from 2021 to 2022. Property crimes are another area of concern for us. Fraud offenses are down 27%. However, burglary offenses in the city have increased by 58.6% through August. Although our total property crimes are actually down 1.4%, burglary, I would argue, is one of the most impactful property crimes that can occur to a family. Families that are impacted by burglaries feel violated in so many ways. There are 33 index crimes that are reported to the FBI. Overall, our index crimes in the city are showing an increase of 2.2%. We must continue to recruit qualified officers in order to maintain our service levels here in the city. Part of this recruitment is focused on minority applicants. In 2021, 18.75% of our applicants for police officers were considered minorities. The city's strategic plan is important to us and how we contribute to the success of the city. Even through the challenges of COVID, we have been working our plan. To highlight several of our KPIs and the additional work that we have done related to the strategic plan, we have completed year-to-date 114 citizen, community, and neighborhood presentations and meetings, 72 outreach events specific to our diverse population groups. We have 61 officers trained in crisis intervention. We have participated in 9 crisis intervention team meetings. We have implemented traffic plans in each of our 7 reporting districts. We received 390 Crime Stopper tips here in the city. We've reviewed 774 body camera videos. We completed our Citizens Academy. We completed our Youth Leadership Academy. We have over 90,000 social media followers, and we have implemented our therapy dog program with Magic. Our operating budget is generally a level request for non-personnel related costs. As a note, 95% of the police operating budget is personnel costs, not including fuel costs, which are covered by the Public Works operating budget. In 2021, our officers responded to an average of 4,090 calls for service a month, which equated to 49,087 calls for the year. In 2022, our officers are responding to an average of 4,347 calls a month, which equates to 52,172 calls for service for 2022. It's a 6.28% increase from 2021 and a 17.6% increase from 2019. On average, 26% of our calls for service are considered high-risk calls. These calls require more than one officer to respond. Applying this factor to our calls per month equates to a more accurate number of approximately 5,477 calls per month. Adding that 25% of calls that require more than one officer to respond equates to 65,726 calls for service a year. These numbers do not account for the various requests from citizens regarding our neighborhood concerns, our programs that we participate in, and of course those calls that our officers receive that do not generate a traditional calls for service. I want to end this opener with this. We have incredibly talented and dedicated police officers who want and need the resources to be even better at fighting crime and serving the community. This past June, more officers were killed in 1 month than any month in the last 4 years. Our officers' jobs are hard. Our officers need to know that their community leaders support them. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I am asking for funding to add 2 police officers to add to our drug enforcement activities. This will allow our drug investigators to have the staff that they need to make Oshkosh a less than desirable place to drug dealers. If you wanted to go to our police budget, we're on page 127, and I'm available for any questions you might have related to our actual budget numbers.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right. The 6412 contractual agreement payments, could you just speak to kind of the big jump in price? It was like 12,000 last year, and now it's 147. Just kind of what that is.
Sure, that's more of a.
Dean?
Yeah, Ross, you got that?
Yeah, before you go into that, Aaron, we kind of addressed some of that this morning. Right before you got here, we talked about the object codes changing in 2022.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of movement between different object codes. Some of them were eliminated, some of them were consolidated. So the 6412 is more of the contractual payments that were kind of moved around into that new category. I don't know, Dean or Manu, if you want to expand on any of those.
Another way, while you're looking up if there's any specific areas, but if you look at the object codes that are just personnel related and the bottom line is that the department expenditures are going up about $700,000 and about $680,000 of it is personnel related. Very, very little on the non-personnel side. And it usually has something to do with training or some other type of mandate. So I give you time to look up the stuff, and I know Manu's always ready to go with to add supplement to anything the chief has. And these guys are 1,000 miles away from each other, so but I think they're prepared to answer that question.
Yeah, Manu, go ahead and take that.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, yeah, for the 6412, a lot of it from the prior year was in the 6401, which used to be the contractual agreement object code, but with the change this past March, that is now kind of a professional service code. So you'll see the 6401 for 2023 is at a 0, and then everything's moved into the new categories that it falls into. Does that explain some of the moves or some of the numbers there for you?
Yeah, is that the body cam one, or is that, which one is that, Manu?
So it would be the body cam one. It would be our CALIA accreditation, our interpreting services, our WILIAG accreditation, and some of the time system, which is our criminal database fees that we pay every year.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
There are numerous agreements that come out of this account, and Manu indicated several of them, but that's all encompassing for many of our contractual services that we have. Recognizing that through CALIA, that's our national accreditation, and WILIAG is our state accreditation as well.
as the chief said, 95% of his budget's personnel, so that's, that pretty much sums up their budget. The vehicles are pretty much the same. Everything else pretty much the same, it's just staying current with training. Isn't that a fair statement to say, chief?
That's fair to say, yes. One thing that we are adding is in an effort to, you'll see you're going to see several references in our budget related to the safety of the community for special events. We are going to be adding an additional drone that's a professional drone that we can use to protect our parades. So we try to avoid what happened in Waukesha or happened in some of the other communities that we're seeing in our area. Keeping our community safe in these special events is very hard, but we have to be creative in what we're doing. So we're going to be working towards providing the equipment to the officers so that we can keep Overwatch and keep our community safe. Are there any other questions related to the police operating budget? I have a couple more budgets to run through, and then I want to talk about our CIP requests.
I have one more question. Just this, not so much to the budget, but I know last year we did a budget enhancement for I don't know the exact title of what it was, but I think
Social worker, I think.
yeah, the social worker having to do with mental health. I was just wondering if you could maybe tell us about how that went. Did it contribute, to your operations, just overall how that was going?
Sure, I appreciate the question. If you recall, just recently I was discussing the work of our behavioral health officer. That's a co-responder model. So our social worker responds most of the time with our behavioral health officer, and really provides a lot of the connections that we need to county services, so that we can get the people that need the help that they need through the county. It's a good bridging tool for us. She comes to work every day to the police department. She provides incredible insight to the workings of mental health and human services, and she's doing a great job.
Listed in here, Mark?
Yeah, it's listed under 6413 contractual employment, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, she's not, she's
it's
actually an employee of the county.
Gotcha, okay.
Human Services, and then that 44.8 is our contribution towards that. So
Gotcha.
county goes halves in with us. I have to
Okay.
thank the county for ponying up that half.
Are there any other questions related to the police operating budget?
Just one, Chief Smith, you spent a good amount of time talking about the calls regarding to homelessness, and you mentioned 446 calls regarding homelessness. So was that, I guess, residents calling about folks who are homeless, or does that combine with folks who are homeless calling in?
Majority of that is residents calling about issues with homelessness, or our Parks Department calling us due to damage that's occurred in some of the parks bathrooms, or damage that's occurred in some of the other parks facilities.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no more questions, we can move on to the real simple budgets, the police animal care budget. That's on page 131. This is an agreement, as you may recall, that we have with the Humane Society, where we fund a portion of their budget. It's incredibly important services that they provide, and through excuse me, I misspoke on that. The animal care budget is on 131. The animal care budget allows for them to handle all of the strays that we may have in the city. It allows them to house them. They also work with us as it relates to any impoundments of animals that we have to do as it relates to any type of violations of the code. It's money well spent. Probably our best bang for the buck. I can tell you, as I've told some of you on council before, in my previous career, I had an animal shelter that I was responsible for. It's a lot more expensive than what we see right here. Any questions on animal care? If not, moving on to 133, our auxiliary police budget. Once again, many of you know our auxiliary. There are a bunch of dedicated citizens that voluntarily help out the city during our special events or in times where we need traffic control for any criminal activity that is long-term. They give their time to us. We provide them with their uniforms. We'll provide them with training. We've helped fund vehicles for them. If we had to replace the hours that they provided to us, it would bust our budget. Again, once again, money well spent for these volunteers. Some of our volunteers were original auxiliary. They've been around for over 50 years. They may not be moving as fast as they once did, but they're still moving.
Oops.
If there's no questions on auxiliary, we'll move on to police crossing guards. 135. Again, not a very much increase on there. I think we all see our crossing guards at intersections throughout the city. We have, I believe it's 18 permanent crossing guard locations, and we have several part-timers who are fill-ins along the way when our crossing guards are not able to make their assignments. Any questions on that?
Recruiting's a big issue here.
If any of y'all want to hold a sign and be a crossing guard, I have a position for you, and we love to fill it in.
What happens when you don't have a crossing guard, Dean?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mark. We put a police officer out there, and it's a lot more expensive. And we probably are filling at least one location on first shift, on one location on second shift, virtually every single day, where we've got to fill a crossing guard position. It's just hard to get people to come out in the morning and the evening to fill these positions.
Just a question then on that. Chief, have you seen environmental design and hardscaping in other cities help with some of the, because I don't think we're alone and unique in a shortage of volunteers or some of these positions. Environmental design as far as slowing things down and making things safer in terms of crossings, whether it's bump outs or really bright, crossing things. Is that something in your world? Or, I mean, does that just kind of hold its own over in the planning world?
Well, that certainly is a streets planning world as well as in public works. I will tell you that we deal with the human side of things. When you have a fourth grader that's walking up to an intersection, they're not paying attention to bump outs. They're not paying attention to the cars. So our crossing guards actually create relationships with the kids. They know every kid that comes through there, and they know which of the kids are going to be maybe not paying attention, and they make sure that they keep them crossing the street safely. We can do all we want to do environmentally, but we're dealing with human nature, and we're dealing with little people.
With that said, Dean, one of your officers is SEPTED trained, and they come to our site plan reviews, correct?
That is correct. We have several officers that are SEPTED certified, but those are we give suggestions as it relates through community policing, through environmental design, to really help out with the businesses who may not consider the needs of keeping the public safe as much as we do. So we do provide a lot of direction for them on how to enhance their plans.
They're part of our site plan review group. We do have them there for that, but sometimes they get in there, sometimes it's more costly, sometimes they love it depends on the development, but they're at the table providing good input for that. And Russ reminded me, when we're done, I'll tell you about a video we saw from 1958. Actually, Dean found it, right? Weren't you the one that found it?
Yes.
I did find it, yes.
And he shared it with me, so.
That's not the one, Your Brain on Drugs, is it?
No,
Well, that was the
1958.
70s.
No, that's 70s, yeah.
Okay.
No, you're a couple decades ahead of that, so I'll tell you later. But it was about crossing.
The city police department and the city manager partnered together to do a safety video for intersections, so people were not jaywalking.
1958. Oh, it's a killer. You'll love it.
Will you do like a recreate the video?
No.
I'm trying to get the city manager to sign on for that.
Being off the screen, I could show it to you on YouTube.
So if there's no more questions, I'd like to move on to our CIP.
Yes,
These
please.
are items that are very important to us. I'll begin with our let me go to the, actually, I don't think there's actual placeholder for that. But within the CIP budget itself, you'll see an indication for our taser replacement. So the Oshkosh Police Department began our taser program in June of 2001. This program has been instrumental in providing a less lethal option for our police officers in dealing with resistant subjects, providing another tool to bring a potentially violent encounter to a safe conclusion. The department has been using our current model of taser since 2004. These are 19-year-old models. Soon these models will no longer be supported by taser. Under the new taser certification program, the department would receive 40 new tasers to replace our existing outdated models. We would also receive all the training cartridges, duty cartridges, replacement cartridges, and instructor certifications. This would be a 5-year contract spreading the purchase over this period at no interest to the city. The next item is our vehicle barrier system. This is very important to us. I spoke briefly about it earlier on in our operating budget. We're going to be looking to purchase a drone for special events. But additionally, through what happened in the tragedy in Waukesha, police departments all over the state, and it's really all over the country, we scratch our heads and we go, how do we be better? You go to a parade, you go to the farmer's market, you go to many of our events on Main Street, and you'll see a wooden barrier there. Those are good to tell people you shouldn't come down here, but they don't stop vehicles. And we have to be mindful of copycats on events. We've seen already where there have been other incidences where vehicles have driven into crowds. But we did some research and also paying attention to what Waukesha was doing as well. We are looking at a vehicle barrier system. Our barriers are becoming necessary to prevent accidental and intentional vehicle crashes into crowds of people. Currently, as I mentioned, we use soft barriers that aren't designed to stop a vehicle entering into a crowded area. As we saw in Waukesha, a determined lone wolf individual can seriously harm or kill multiple people by driving through a crowd. The proposed system would deter this activity. These systems are designed to immobilize vehicles with little harm to the occupants. The system, it's being evaluated by many agencies across the state, and Waukesha is currently buying a similar system as what we're purchasing. This will give us some peace of mind that our citizens will not be harmed by these types of attacks. The proposed funding amount would cover half the cost for the initial investment. The remainder would be funded by the Convention and Visitors Bureau. The city manager's been working with Amy, and he's gotten a verbal commitment to help us out with this. Our cost for this system will be $100,000 with an additional $100,000 coming from the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Waukesha is spending $700,000 to buy a lot more of this system.
And I would say I did have a discussion with Ms. Albright at the Convention and Visitors Bureau. There's a capital development fund that the CVB has. So I suggested to her that this would be something that would provide peace of mind to people coming in for special events. We'd certainly start with the farmer's market, but move on to other activities. In addition to the funding, one of the issues that would probably come up is because this is something that Chief Smith feels very strongly about, and I've spoken with the folks in Waukesha as he has, and they feel that it's something that is something necessary for them to do. But it should be all of us thinking about it, not just a city that's had a tragedy occur. One of the things we may need to do is take a look at, we gave some barriers to the farmer's market, and they set them up, and it works out fine. That was part of the deal. We were going to have to replace them anyway, so we gave them used barriers. These are very passive barriers. The ones that Chief Smith's proposing are very active, strong. We may find ourselves having to come to the cost of putting those up ourselves because it's we can't expect somebody else to put up something like this. These are, they They can
What
get
do they
so,
look like? What are you talking about?
well,
If you can picture a steel L that's solid from top to bottom, it once a vehicle hits it, they'll run over top of it. It'll disable the vehicle, and they won't make it into a crowd.
it effectively drives it into the pavement. The backside of the L goes into a pavement, and the vehicle goes up, so it can't overtop it. So these take like a equivalent of like a forklift or a pallet jack to put them into place. So that's not something that you can, get two volunteers, you and I pick up, you and I could pick up a wooden horse and put it up, and that's easy. These are going to take people who set it up properly and everything. So if we do this, and I think we're almost compelled to now, that we would probably need to have Public Works or CSOs or somebody of that nature, because they're going to have to bring them in big trucks, unload them, and put them out. So it's a little more
And
work.
come back, load them up, leave. It's
Yeah.
very cumbersome, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is.
Very laborious.
Yeah, so you just can't ask two volunteers to, here, you take one end and I take the other. That just isn't going to work. So
And how welcoming and inclusive does that feel, right? It's like a shame that we have to have this conversation.
Yeah.
But appreciate having the conversation.
Yeah, it's one of those things that
It's one of those things that you never think that they would happen, but then you have to readjust when they do happen. We find many times in public safety that once one person does something, other people go, "Hey, I can do that too, and maybe I can do it. Maybe I can do it worse, not better, but do it worse than the last person." And we end up with the copycats. I shudder when I walk through the farmers market, and Mayor, I see you there as well. When I know that anybody can drive through there and harm many people, and then we have our parades. I mean, it's just there's so many things that occur on Main Street that we have a responsibility if we have the ability to keep our citizens safe that are doing these events. Moving on to our next CIP item, it's a true narcotics detection system. This is one of many systems that are out there, but the True Narcotics Detection System is designed to alleviate much of the handling of narcotics by our police officers. It uses laser technology, and it identifies over 500 controlled substances that we can do field testing on without putting officers at risk. Our officers handle numerous types of narcotics, as I indicated earlier, on a nearly daily basis. One of the prevailing issues in today's times is the introduction of fentanyl in many narcotics that we're locating today. Fentanyl is the leading cause of drug overdose deaths, as we've talked about. Fentanyl can be absorbed through the skin, and an officer just handling a narcotic could put them at risk of death. This equipment can test suspected narcotics, oftentimes through its existing packaging, reducing the officer's need to handle the drugs and keeping them safely. Right now, we've driven our policy that when officers are packaging their narcotics in order to send them for testing, we actually have two officers present at the time for the packaging purposes. One officer just watches the other officer to make sure that he doesn't get impacted by fentanyl. It's that serious. Any questions on the TrueNarc? Moving on to our crisis negotiator vehicle. This has been a request that we've put in for a couple years now. The Mobile Field Force Crisis Negotiation Vehicle is the primary transport vehicle for our Mobile Field Force team, as well as our crisis negotiators. The team is able to suit up and be transported as a team to troubled areas and can deploy with all required equipment available to them. The Mobile Field Force is able to stage that needed equipment in this vehicle so that it's quickly accessible during emergency situations. The vehicle serves also as a rehab station for those team members when working assignments. As we saw recently during the civil unrest over the last couple of years and some of our political visits, we have very passionate people that come into our community. We were very fortunate and I think successful in keeping our community safe during all those events. And we painstakingly worked hard to have officers in place to allow people to exercise their constitutional rights, but do it in such a way that nobody was harmed, nor did we damage any property. This vehicle also serves as a workspace for our crisis negotiation team. These negotiators set up in the vehicle to attempt to communicate with individuals that are in crisis. Their goal is to talk them through the crisis and get them to safety. They need this workspace to facilitate the work of our negotiator team. We've seen really great work from our negotiators in getting critical incidents solved without injury to other persons. Our current vehicle is 21 years old. By the time it's replaced, it will be 24 years old. Our CIP policy looks for vehicles like this to be in service for 10 years. We're double, almost 2.5 times the lifespan of a vehicle. Another issue with the existing truck is that it's not equipped with its own self-contained power source. It has to be plugged into shore power to meet full power needs. Its heating and cooling system also is not capable of working without the shore power. This vehicle serves our department during SWAT activations, crowd control activations, large-scale emergencies, and at times special events, also to include our crisis negotiations. So with that, it's proposed by the manager and finance director to fund all of our CIP projects with ARPA. With that, I'm open for any other questions related to our CIP.
So when we did the CIP, if you're looking at page 458, you'll notice taser and Narcon detection system was at that point being recommended out of levy, but I've moved those from levy to ARPA. So if you're looking at our CIP projects, and I should have said this earlier, actually starts on page 457. This newer report has it by department, but it also has it by funding source. So you can see at a glance when you're looking at any one department where the source of funding's coming from.
Are there any other questions?
Not on the CIP. Are you prepared to talk about your enhancement request?
Absolutely.
I think this will be coming up on, this is budget number 5 for me, I think. This is the most amount of personnel requests I've seen in any given year of my 5. I think we got 13 or 14 personnel requests in front of us, even including the utility. So, and that's on top of a over 4% levy increase already. And what I'm building up towards is that it's going to be difficult to accommodate much of anything in terms of enhancements. However, your request is interestingly timed because a fellow council member and I have been having some discussions for the last month or so regarding drug activity, overdose deaths, and the impacts that has on this community, the businesses, families, individuals, and you use the right terms. It's time to make doing the drug dealing business in Oshkosh very difficult for some individuals. But given that it may be difficult to support many positions with levy this year, if we had an opportunity to use some other funds, giving you and I hate doing this, but I think this is a unique opportunity. You know, a 2-year window, I don't want to call it a pilot, you can call it whatever you want, but give you 2 years with some temporary funds, go heavy, go hard, and then you come back with what I assume will be a mountain of data that says we absolutely have to continue it. And what I'm saying, I guess, is I'm looking that, is it possible we could use some ARPA funds? Over the last 2 years, I think it's pretty easy to say that drug overdose deaths, and the similar have drastically increased during COVID. And to help this community rebound, I can't think of a better way, honestly, than using ARPA funds to try to support some additional units for the Vice and Narcotics Unit. Thoughts on a funding source like that to be able to potentially give you the officers you're asking for, but I guess in a limited term, I guess would be my question.
Well, there's no doubt to me that this is the most critical issue that we are facing as a city. The proliferation of drugs in our city that are impacting our community members through mental health issues and drug abuse issues. It's incredible, and it's not just our city that's facing these problems. Um, However, as it relates to funding sources, I have had discussions with Mr. Roloff and with Russ, and frankly, for me, yes, I can deliver data. I'm pretty confident I can deliver data, but I would defer questions as it relates to temporary monies related to whatever funding source may come. I'll leave it to the financial people and to the city manager.
I appreciate the deflection. That's a good thing. No, it's absolutely worthy of trying to make an impact. The number of overdose deaths in the last year alone, the increase is astounding, and to help us try to rebound from that. So
I don't want it to go unnoticed that if we didn't have fentanyl with our officers, our overdose deaths will be off the chart. That's the only reason we aren't off the chart right now, is because of the use of fentanyl.
You mean Narcan?
I'm sorry, correct. Narcan, yes. Thank you. Fentanyl on the brain.
Speaking of which, so just a month or 6 weeks ago, with the approval of the opioid settlement spending plan, where I think it's $31 million, that would prioritize funding for Narcan and the fentanyl testing strips, new treatment facilities, prevention programs, grants for law enforcement, and improved data collection. How do you see any of that opioid settlement funding working its way into the needs that we're facing?
We are currently using that funding source to replace our Narcan. Previously, our Narcan was funded through community donations, and we're now attached to that grant program to replace our Narcan. There is no significant monies coming to the municipalities for any large-scale equipment purchases or for personnel. It's staying at the state level.
So those law enforcement grants are not really something we can count on?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Well, you're right on cue. 'Cause
55 minutes, pretty good, chief.
And that's even with the delay with the technology, so. You didn't feel
And
othered, you didn't feel othered by being virtual, did you?
Feel what?
You didn't feel othered by being virtual, did you?
No, because I can see each of you looking at me, and I was the only person talking most of the time.
Yeah, the first half hour, we were the others.
It's like I was doing an online school for you. I'm the professor.
All right, well, thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you very much for indulging me, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. That does it for today. We have tomorrow morning, Public Works and whatever's left of administrative services. Diane was checking to see if we can move library and museum up a little bit, and I think we should be able to pull it off, but Diane's already left, and I didn't have a confirmation from her just yet, but by morning time, I'm pretty confident we'll be able to do Q&A and wrap up about 3 o'clock tomorrow, given what I'm seeing. And of course, if anything else comes up, Q&A wrap up, if you feel that we haven't touched anything, we can talk about it then.
Can I just touch on one quick thing before you close your books real quick? The first page after the budget overview tab, I actually have it on the screen now, and we didn't really have a chance to go over it. The city manager discussed a little bit about this in his letter, but I just wanted you to see the numbers real quick. This is the top box that you see on the screen is the levy by the various funds that we talked about, and you heard about most of those today. And we talked about the debt service levy, and we talked about the 4.19% increase in the levy. The middle box on this form, we also talked a little bit about it today. There was some reference on the fair market value going back to 19. It was almost 95%. 2020, 92. 21, 88, 22, 82%. And these are estimated numbers, so this equalized value is not finalized yet. But as it stands right now, our assessed value is 71% of the equalized value. And then that can translate into the various rates. So the assessed tax rate, based on the assessed valuation, is $12.07. Equalized is actually going down $1.05 to 8.57 rounded. The reason I say that is people pay on the assessed basis, not the equalized basis. And again, when we talked about this in our workshops, the equalized basis is used to distribute to multiple jurisdictions. The typical residents of $150,000 would pay $1,800 in taxes under this budget, which is $70 more than what was paid last year. And then I usually break that down into a monthly basis and do like a monthly little where we spend our money.
That's in, yeah, you got one of your pages with all that.
Yeah, so I just wanted to walk through that page real quick to kind of help you understand how this all fits together. Sorry.
And it also points out two things. One, points out the need to do the reval, no question about it. And it also, if we were the county, we'd be saying our tax rate's going down $1. Our taxes are going up 4.19%. That's our levy. That's our, I prefer to just be straight up about that, because saying you're down $1.05 on equalized rate, when they look at their tax bill, they're gonna see from us a $70 increase. That's what we need to be honest about.
The rate's actually 50 cents, 46 cents.
46. Oh, that's an
Increase.
increase. Yeah, no, but I'm talking about the $1.05.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, the rate's going up 3.98%, but the levy's going up 4.19.
Yes, you are right.
Straight up. So, till tomorrow, thank you. Thanks for all your attention. This is a lot, I know.